The Legend of the Ninja from the Hidden Mist Village. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 126, The Peak of the End. PFFT. Haha. The woman laughed, as if she heard something very funny. Boy, if you say give it to me, I will give it to you, right? After a long while, she stopped smiling. Who do you think you are? Her eyes were full of murderous intent. The intersection was surrounded by ruins everywhere. Kimimaro and Hotaru were surrounded by them, and the cold light of the sharp blades was flashing. Hotaru, I will open a way out for you on the left, and run back to the hot spring street. Kimimaro whispered to Hotaru without turning his head, and he had just finished speaking halfway. I don't want it. The girl interrupted him stubbornly, unwilling to follow the arrangement. What nonsense are you making? Kimimaro was very angry when he heard it, and even clenched the hand holding the bone knife even tighter. If you want to scold me, do it. Hotaru held a kunai in a defensive posture, bit her lip, and leaned against Kimimaro. I will never leave brother Kimimaro alone and run away. You, cough. Kimimaro couldn't help coughing again. Hotaru looked at him with heartache, tears welled up in her eyes, but she insisted on not saying a word. Oh, you two really have a deep brother-sister relationship, but it's a pity. She closed her eyes and sighed. When she opened her eyes again, her face suddenly turned behind her, and shouted to her subordinates, kill them. Yes, Master Hanglian. Clang, bang. Mingshin fought with Kabuto, who he ran into by chance, somewhere in the audience. His arms were flexible, and he used his katana to chop him in close combat, forcing him to parry awkwardly. If we compare them just from this point, we can see the difference in skills between the two. Kabuto was careless, and was caught by Mingshin in an instant. Mingshin predicted his dodge position, and slashed him diagonally, and his mask was directly cut into two pieces and fell off. Ding. Blocking the katana attack, he turned and jumped back, and distanced himself from Mingshin. Kabuto raised his hand to treat the knife wound on his forehead, and praised him. I'm not good at weapon duels, but even so, I can still see that your swordsmanship is very good now. After a moment, Kabuto put down his hand, and continued to flatter him through his glasses. Mingshin, you are only about 14 years old, and you can practice swordsmanship to such a level. It's really amazing. I don't deserve it. It's just a coincidence. It's not as exaggerated as you say. Mingshin knew very well that he had accumulated experience from two lives, so no matter in terms of comprehension or skill mastery, he would learn faster than a group of real teenagers. But he said, I'm just a lazy guy who wants to get by. Haha. Kabuto threw the kunai with many cracks in his hand to the ground, took out a pill from his robe, and threw it into his mouth to chew it. Binglian pill? Mingshin was quite familiar with this thing, and it was hard not to recognize it. He also took the opportunity to take it out of his waist bag and chewed one. After adjusting his state, Kabuto began to make hand seals. That seal is. Mingshin saw his trick, and concentrated all his chakra on his hands, thinking, I didn't expect that this kid is also an expert in using medical ninjutsu. Whoosh. Bang. Kabuto disappeared into the ground in an instant. Mingshin jumped up from the spot as if by reflex. Boom. The heel of his right foot was almost touched by Kabuto's hand. Boom. Mingshin swung his sword at Kabuto, but he turned over and kicked the blade away with his foot. The two fought for more than 10 rounds. Crack. They fought while walking to the edge of the stands. Kabuto dodged the blade left and right. After sidestepping a waist-cutting blow, Mingshin didn't have time to stop the sword, and cut a huge gap in the railing. Swish. The two jumped down from the top to the competition site, one in front and one behind. Ding. Ding. In the center of the venue, the two men who were in a stalemate of fighting, heard the sound of footsteps in the distance, and both stopped and jumped back to be alert. Swish. Who are you? Zuanjian asked the newcomer with a senbon in his mouth, and looked him up and down. Although he was very tall, he looked very young, so he must be young. My name is Ito Mingshin. Mingshin took the initiative to introduce himself to him, and then asked, brother, what should I call you? Zuan said lightly, Shirano Mingshan. Nice to meet you. Mingshan nodded and swung the blade. When he saw the enemy in front of him clearly, his expression suddenly changed. The veins on the back of his hand holding the handle bulged, and his face was extremely cold. Maki, I missed you so much. TSK, it's you, kid. Maki also looked very ugly after seeing Mingshan. It's just right to settle the old accounts at that time. Maki, although I don't know what personal grudges you have with the other party, Maki is a Sand Village ninja after all. Zuan wanted to persuade him a few words, but, my teacher was killed by him. Mingshan took a few steps forward, so he must die today. Teacher? Zuan looked at his back, his eyes thoughtful. Moonlight Gale. Mingshan said to him without turning back. Gale. Zuan was stunned when he heard it, and did not say anything else, just looked at him with complicated eyes. I'm so sorry, I didn't pay attention, and attracted your enemy. Kabuto retreated to Maki's side, and apologized to him. I don't take that kind of kid seriously. Maki looked at Mingshan fiercely, and took out a new kunai. Last time I was too careless, and he easily sneaked up on me. This time it won't be so easy. He stepped forward and ran. I will kill this kid here, and send him to the underworld to accompany his master. Die. Mingshan shouted, suddenly rushed forward, attacked from the front, and slashed at Maki with a knife. Ding. Maki took his attack head on. Zuan and Kabuto also moved, and the two sides fought. Outside the 4 purple flame formation, where the 4 sound ninjas were, the ninja at both ends kept glancing at the battle inside the dark purple light wall barrier, sneering in his heart, the current Hokage is just like this. Boom. The fierce battle inside the barrier was in full swing. The third Hokage cleverly blocked the series of kicks performed by the first Hokage, and he just forced him back with a sweep. Unexpectedly, the second Hokage came and fought for more than 10 rounds of physical skills. The third Hokage cleverly seized the momentary gap left by him, and with a backhanded heel, he turned and threw him directly out. Ta. The second Hokage landed unharmed, and stood beside the first Hokage. Even if the first and second Hokage have exactly the same body shape and appearance. The white-robed ANBU ninja who was watching the battle carefully outside the barrier thought to himself, they are just unconscious killing tools now. He looked at the third Hokage, and was deeply worried about him. Fire style, fire dragon flame bomb. The third Hokage's danshan swelled up, and he spit out 3 fire dragons from his mouth, rushing straight at the first and second Hokage from the left, center, and right. When they were about to get close, they gathered into a whole wave of fierce fire, rushing past. Whoosh. The scorching flames were stronger than one wave, but the 2 adults were dead after all, so the impact on them was extremely small, and could even be ignored. Water style, water array wall. After the second Hokage made a simple seal, he closed his hands and violently spurted out a huge water wall like a sea wave from his mouth, to resist the third Hokage's fire dragon flame bomb. Hiss. Wow. The high temperature flames were repeatedly attacked by the second Hokage's large water flow, forming a large area of white water vapor, and then were completely disintegrated and melted. How is it possible? The newcomer beside the white-robed ANBU said in disbelief. You can actually use such a level of water-style ninjutsu in such a place without water. It's amazing. As expected of the former Hokage, Orochimaru sincerely praised the second Hokage's water-style ninjutsu, which was very clever. As soon as the water droplets in the air condensed and disappeared, the second Hokage immediately formed a seal and shouted, "Water style, water rush wave." After putting his hands together, he summoned a wave of water that quickly rotated and rose like a tornado. The second Hokage drove the wave of water, which spread and rose like a waterfall, and then rushed down to the third Hokage, forming a rushing river. Earth style, earth flow wall. The third Hokage shouted, and a huge and thick earth wall was created from his mouth to block the impact of the river. Wow. The water wave passed through the earth wall, hit the edge of the barrier and bounced back. Seeing this, the third Hokage quickly jumped to the top of the earth wall to avoid the water flow. The first Hokage took this opportunity to swiftly step on the water and rushed to the third Hokage again. As soon as the third Hokage fell from the high earth wall, he saw the first Hokage rushing towards him with great momentum and hurriedly formed a seal with his hands. Fire style, Phoenix flower technique. From his mouth, small balls as big as flowers spewed out to stop him from moving forward, but they were all blocked one by one. Whoosh! The first Hokage jumped forward into the air a few steps away from the third Hokage and kicked him with one foot. Snap! The first Hokage kicked the third Hokage on the left wrist guard, and before he could react, a splash of water was raised from his feet when he landed to block his vision. Snap! This time, he kicked him in the face with two kicks and took advantage of his unstable standing to add a punch and hit him hard. Bang! The last kick directly kicked the third Hokage away and rolled far away, lying on the water. After a moment, the third Hokage slowly sat up from the ground and praised him. You are still as powerful as before. Wow, wow. Kai. Before the third Hokage could see clearly, he was suddenly dragged into the water by the water whip that emerged from the bottom of the water. The third Hokage's neck was stuck tightly by the second Hokage, and he complained in his heart, it's really hard to deal with these two opponents. Wow. After a long time, the third Hokage finally broke free from the water, and with a few moves, he jumped to the top of the earth wall, but then, whoosh, whoosh, boom. An ultra high pressure stream of water immediately spurted out from the water and headed straight for him. Seeing this, the third Hokage moved left and right on the earth wall to avoid it. After only a moment, the huge earth wall was destroyed by the high pressure water column. The ANBU members outside the barrier were all stunned by this scene. The second Hokage's water jutsu is too powerful. It simply ignores the physical rule that earth overcomes water. Chapter 127 Red Lotus. Bang, bang. After the river receded, the earthen wall blocks that were penetrated by the high pressure water column fell from above one after another, rumbling, and the third Hokage also landed on the ground. Snap. Ha. The third Hokage looked down and noticed that a tile on the ground suddenly cracked from it, and a small sapling grew out of it. He looked up in doubt and thought to himself, oh no, this is the secret technique that the first Hokage often used in battles. Many places around the third Hokage were destroyed at an extremely fast speed. The first Hokage put his hands together and shouted, would release, tree world birth. Crack, crack. Ha. Amid the first Hokage's roar, more thriving trees broke through the tiles one after another, as if they were extremely eager for that 1 meter of sunlight, and spread wildly, and their vines and branches all pointed to the third Hokage, who was in a precarious situation without any surprise. Dingling. Crystal escape, God controlling crossing technique. Hangian half crouched, clasped his hands together, and a row of long crystals crystallized straight from the ground, attacking Kimimaro. Snap. He decisively pulled out his spine, shook his wrist, and wrapped Aang with bone thread, throwing her away before the crystals got close. Kimimaro brother. Aang turned her head hurriedly as soon as she landed, after being thrown out of the crystal's attack range. She saw that after the crystals touched and pierced into Kimimaro's body, they only penetrated his epidermis and then shattered one after another, unable to move forward an inch. Hangian on the opposite side saw that the cut epidermis was full of creepy white bones and was very unhappy. TSK, Viriastium again. Kimimaro's forehead was covered with sweat and he gasped with his mouth slightly open. Although he had killed many enemies by the two, his situation was still not optimistic. He looked around, and there were scattered corpses on the ground in front of him, and both sides of the street were full of red crystals and white bone blades. Just as Aang was relieved, she suddenly sensed danger in her heart. Without thinking, she jumped away from her original position, dodging the enemy's shuriken sneak attack, and then fought back, and started fighting again. Hangian tore off the shredded sleeve on one of her arms. You are really tough. Same here. You are more difficult to deal with than I thought. Kimimaro replied. Crystal escape, crystal prison. Hangian quickly formed seals with both hands. A large light circle suddenly appeared under his feet. Kimimaro looked down and saw it, and he turned over and jumped back to avoid it. Hangian took the opportunity to rush forward, and his arm passed through a small red light circle and used magic to form a half-moon shaped narrow crystal knife. Ding, ding. Kimimaro used a bone knife to block the opponent's quick attack, and they fought for more than 20 rounds. Whoosh, whoosh. Hangian kicked away Kimimaro's bone knife with one move, jumped back, and then quickly threw a series of crystal-shaped hexagonal shurikens with his right hand, and rushed towards him. Ding, ding, ding. Kimimaro wielded the bone knife, blocking them one by one with agility and power, almost without any unnecessary moves, sliding back and sticking to the side of eyeing Master Hanglian. The white-haired masked ninja beside him waited for her to retreat, and then whispered in her ear, "In the next round of attack, a few of us can go around behind him and catch that little girl, and then..." "Shut up." Hanglian scolded impatiently before he finished speaking. "Ghost Mist, if you dare to bring up such a despicable idea again." Putting the crystal knife on his neck, his eyes were extremely fierce. "I will kill you first. You, I know I was wrong." He hurriedly lowered his head, knowing that Hanglian could do what he said, and cold sweat ran down his forehead. "Humph, we have lost so many people, if we can't even deal with a little kid completely." Hanglian's face was at hen, and he was extremely annoyed. "What will Master Orochimaru think of us?" Ding. Cap. After repelling the enemies in front of him, Aang glanced at Kimimaro standing behind him, and found that he was a little unstable, swaying and anxiously shouting, "Kimimaro brother. Hey, I'm fine." Kimimaro barely stood up, and said with a false sense of ease, "HMPH, kid, let's see how long you can hold on." Hanglian pointed the crystal knife at him diagonally, just as he was about to launch another crystal escape ninjutsu attack. Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu. From the street behind him, dozens of shuriken suddenly broke through the wind and hit their vital points accurately, and screams came one after another. HMM. Hanglian turned his head in surprise and saw an old man with a large iron pot on his back, holding a ninja sword, and running towards them quickly. Boom. Crack. HMM. After hearing the sound, Ming Xian looked up and found that the roof above the plaque of number 1 in the world was shaking constantly, muttering, "What happened there? Now is not the time to care about this." Zuan Jian, who was standing beside him, reminded him breathlessly, looking at the opposite side with vigilance. "Sorry." Ming Xian retracted his short absent-minded gaze, held the hilt of the knife with both hands, and whoosh. He rushed over again with Zuan Jian. Maki was stabbed with 2 shurikens on each thigh, and blood flowed down and soaked his feet. With resentment in his eyes, he looked at Ming Xian and gritted his teeth and said, "Asshole. I didn't expect that this kid was so vicious." Dao, who was beside him, had a robe that was also cut into several large holes, but he was very strange and was not seriously injured. After taking a look at Maki's injuries, he threw him a pill and said, "This is a soldier's ration pill." Maki took it without hesitation and swallowed it without hesitation. Just after he finished eating, the 2 men came to him. Ding, ding. The 4 of them were entangled again. Ming Xian's moves were not conventional, and the angles were tricky and unpredictable. Light and shadow suddenly appeared. Snap. He kept changing the trajectory of the blade in front of Maki, like a ghost, and attacked with high intensity for several rounds. Swish. Snap. The kunai in Maki's hand, which was already full of gaps, was cut off by Ming Xian's sword. He took advantage of the situation and used the autumn wind to sweep the leaves and kicked Maki to the ground. Snap. Just as Ming Xian was about to make the last move and stabbed Maki, who was lying on the ground. Ugh. He unexpectedly heard Zuan Jian being hit in the body, and his sight shifted to see him groaning and coughing blood from his mouth. Ming Xian just turned his head slightly, and Maki, who was lying on the ground, took the opportunity to seize the opportunity and quickly sat up, turned over and jumped. Not good. He came back to his senses and only had time to block it with his sword, but Maki was very decisive and didn't care about the large cuts on his arm. The blood flowed down to his wrist and he escaped far from his attack range. TSK. Realizing his negligence, Ming Xian put away his sword and looked at the other party angrily, but he had no choice but to rush to rescue Zuan Jian first. Puff. Zuan Jian was kicked in the abdomen by Dao at this time. He slid back a long way, bleeding from the corners of his mouth. He looked at his arms on both sides and was secretly shocked. What happened? "Oh, I just cut off the biceps of your 2 arms a little." Dao explained to Zuan Jian in detail in a calm tone, and did not forget to show him a faint evil smile at the corner of his mouth. Ding. Chapter 128 Support. After Kabuto warded off the shuriken attack, he suddenly took out 2 ninja tools from his sleeves, one on the left and one on the right. He held the shuriken on the left and threw it to his side without even looking at it. With a bang, it hit Mingshin's fainting clone, and the white smoke dissipated. The other shuriken on the right blocked the quick attack from the back in time after 2 clangs. The sound of metal collision and friction was extremely harsh. After Kabuto blocked the blade with one hand, he immediately used his legs to force Mingshin back and then opened the distance between them. TSK. Mingshin saw that the sneak attack failed, and he retreated to Zuanjian very depressed, blurting out a question. Why can you always defend against my attacks? He really wanted to know if he had eyes on his back. Who knows? Kabuto did not answer his question, but looked up at the barrier on the roof and said to himself, there shouldn't be any big problems on Lord Orochimaru's side. He can easily deal with the third Hokage. After that, Kabuto retracted his gaze, instantly jumped towards Maki, and whispered to him, let's evacuate temporarily. The people on both sides of our stands are almost wiped out by those guys from Konoha. He was afraid that, if he didn't leave, he would be surrounded by this group of Jonin. Maki raised his head and glanced around. After finding that his side was indeed gradually losing the advantage in numbers, he decisively gritted his teeth and agreed, okay, let's move to other places first, and then continue the next step of the battle, but Lord Kazukige's side I will coordinate a few more teams to delay these Jonin, and buy more time for Lord Kazukige. After saying that, Dao quickly took out 2 smoke bombs from his arms, and threw them hard at the feet of Zuanjian and Mingshin who were standing there. With a bang, they were completely covered by the gushing smoke, and could not see anything outside their sight. When the 2 of them dispersed the smoke, and opened their eyes again, Dao and Maki had already retreated and ran away, and were no longer at the scene. Damn, he ran away. Mingshin was annoyed and blamed himself. Cough. Zuanjian felt uncomfortable in his chest and lungs, and spit out blood from his mouth again. Now, except for his arms, other parts of his body have been hit by Dao several times. Can you hold on? Mingshin asked him. I'm fine. Zuanjian said so, but he still couldn't lift his hands. Just at this moment, swish, swish. From the stands above, a group of people flew down and quickly came to the 2 of them. Hey, it's you. Mingshin looked up and saw the people coming and said, Mingshin, where are Dao and the others? Kakashi and his companions walked forward to inquire. He had just seen Kabuto and Maki in the stands. How come they disappeared in the blink of an eye? They retreated. It was Genma who spoke. Are you okay, Genma? Kei, who was following Kakashi, asked him. Genma shook his head to show that he was fine. Are you okay? Han Dao, who was standing on the left side of Kei, asked him seriously. Fortunately, they are just some minor injuries. It's no big deal. Mingshin took out a bandage to bandage the cuts on his arms and legs caused by Maki. Han Dao saw Mingshin treating his wounds alone and was about to say something, but when she saw other senior ninjas talking and discussing next to them, she closed her mouth silently again. It seems that the vibration above has stopped. Genma looked up and said to everyone, Kakashi, should we go up to support? Han, who was standing on the other side of Kakashi, asked for advice. Well, wait a minute, Han. Swish, swish. Before Kakashi could finish his words, a new wave of enemies appeared in the competition venue. 2 groups of sand ninjas and a group of sound ninjas rushed in from the outside of the venue and scattered around them from a distance. Teacher K. Zyoli's voice suddenly came down from the stands. As soon as the voice fell, the person arrived beside them. Lee, why are you coming down too? K turned to look at Zyoli. His green leather tight sportswear was scratched with several gaps, but fortunately he did not suffer any serious injuries. Compared to tomorrow, he is much better. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Waves of shuriken broke through the wind and attacked. The Sound and Sand Coalition did not give the master and apprentice time to chat. Without saying a word, they threw a large number of shurikens at everyone and attacked in all directions. Be careful. Kakashi jumped away first, reminding everyone, and the others followed closely, jumping away quickly to avoid it. Thump, thump. The shuriken attacks missed and all hit the open space where they were. However, the second wave of shuriken came flying quickly again. Mingshin tactfully blocked all the shurikens flying towards him and looked at Zuanjian, who was far away. Mingshin, just take care of yourself. I'll retreat first. Without waiting for him to speak, Zuanjian dodged a few times and jumped away from the competition venue. Zuanjian knew that his hands were now injured by Kabuto's chakra scalpel, and he couldn't use his chakra normally and couldn't exert his strength. If he continued to stay at the scene, he would only drag down others. Instead of doing this, he might as well leave and find a safe place to heal himself. Mingshan watched Zuanjian jump away from the scene, and when he was about to rush towards the enemy with the clenched handle of the knife, boom. There was another noise from the roof. Forget it, I'd better go up and take a look and support Lord Hokage. Mingshan looked at the two sides in the battle. With Kakashi and Hangdao here to clean up the enemies, it won't be a big problem. After making up his mind, he exerted force with his legs, turned to the roof, where the third Hokage was in a few moves, and quickly climbed up and walked quickly. What is Mingshan going to do? Kakashi had just defeated a sound ninja, turned around and saw him nimbly and agilely climbing up the wall, and was very puzzled. That idiot. Hangdao cursed in his heart, knowing what he was going to do. Is he going to go to the roof alone to rescue the Hokage? K guessed. How is it possible? Han couldn't believe it. Mingshan. After hearing what several senior ninjas said, Zaioli looked at Mingshan's fearless figure and didn't feel ridiculous. Instead, he thought he was very handsome. Lee. K shouted to Zaioli. Teacher K. Zaioli looked in his direction when he heard the voice. You should also catch up with Xianming. Gay clenched his fist, his blood boiling, and said, youth should be like him. Yes, Teacher K. Zaioli nodded excitedly and immediately moved to quickly dodge the enemy's attack and blocked and ran straight to Mingshan along the wall to chase him. The name is Mingshan, right? Kakashi looked at K in confusion and complained in his heart. Not to mention the game scene below and the gossip of the senior ninjas about him. At this moment, Mingshan finally stepped onto the roof after a few breaths of time. As soon as he arrived, he heard the sound of wind coming from behind. Whoosh. Zaioli actually arrived later and got there first, which scared Mingshan, and he almost fell off the edge without standing properly. Hey, what are you doing following me? Mingshan patted his chest and asked him speechlessly. Teacher K asked me to follow you to assist you. Zaioli answered Mingshan meticulously. Is that so? Mingshan looked at him expectantly, pointing to the dark purple light wall in front of him. Can you remove this barrier? No. Zaioli answered decisively. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 129 Burial of the Love Family. After hearing this, Mingshan's face immediately became long. Then what are you doing here? Teacher K asked me to be your partner to rescue Hokage together. Zaioli clenched his fists with passion, saying the nonsense he had said before. But Zaioli, now there is this broken barrier, we can't save Hokage. Mingshan spread his hands to him. Then let's break this barrier and rescue Hokage. Zaioli looked at the light wall in the distance with a sharp gaze. But how do we break the barrier now? Let's find a way to break the barrier together. Mingshan felt that he really couldn't say anything more. He was so angry at this idiot that he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He cursed in his heart. If I could solve the problem, why would I need to argue with you so much? Find a way. What the hell? Who are you? Several members of the ANBU who had been squatting by the barrier as spectators finally noticed their existence and ran over to ask sternly. We are. It's like this. Before Mingshan could answer the ANBU's question, Zaioli was very proactive and explained everything. Oh, so that's it. After listening to it, the white-robed ANBU looked at them both with strange eyes and pointed at the light wall. You said you want to rescue the Hokage. Can you break this barrier? He asked the same question as Mingshan just now. Actually, Zaioli was about to answer seriously. Ahem. Mingshan saw this and quickly coughed loudly, changing the subject, and said to the ANBU, well, can you take us to the barrier first? Sure. Although the white-robed ANBU didn't believe from the bottom of his heart that the barrier could be easily broken by the two of them, he still took the two to the edge to try. When they came to the corner of the dark purple light wall, they saw a strange sound ninja connected at both ends who was concentrating on stabilizing the barrier. After seeing several Konoha ninjas coming towards him, he took the initiative to challenge. Hey, Konoha's third-rate ninja, what can you do for me? Third-rate? Mingshin was stunned, turned his head to look at Xiaoli and the ANBU, and found that after hearing this, they were very angry, pointing at him and shouting, "What are you talking about, bastard? You're too much." Xiaoli clenched his fists and demanded angrily, "How can you belittle us like this? I want you to apologize for the arrogance and rudeness you said before." Apologize? He turned his face away and laughed strangely, shouting to the other 3 people in the corner, "Hey, did you hear that? Konoha wants me to apologize." A few scums are worthy of us apologizing. Eat shit. The red-haired female ninja sneered disdainfully. "Teiwaya, it's too much for a girl to say such things." The sturdy fat man opposite her kindly advised her, but, "Shut up, fat pig." Teiwaya didn't appreciate it. What can I say to you, Jirobo? The six-handed Otonin in another place heard Teiwaya scolding Jirobo and said with great glee that Mingshin suddenly seemed to have something to ask the 2 ninjas. He looked at the seaweed-headed man with a slightly suspicious look. "What? Are you from the Zange family?" Mingshin asked him without any context. He didn't react for a moment. "What Zange family? Zange family?" The ANBU and Xiaoli around Mingshin also looked at each other, obviously not knowing which country's family ninja he was talking about. "TSK, listen to me, we are the 4 sound ninjas." The man looked at Mingshin coldly. "My name is Sakun, not a member of the Zange family." "Oh, I'm so sorry, I made a mistake." Mingshin politely bowed to Sakun and apologized. "I thought you also played audition, so you painted your mouth with green paint and dressed so androgynous." Although Sakun didn't understand what these messed up words were, it was obvious that he didn't say anything nice and was very annoyed. Sakun. Seeing that he was about to go berserk, the six-handed sound ninja hurriedly reminded him loudly, "Lord Orochimaru is still in there, don't forget our mission." Hearing this, Sakun had to suppress his anger and temporarily resisted the urge to retort Mingshin. TSK. Mingshin was very disappointed. He wanted to use this trick to force him to untie the barrier on his own and come out to fight, but it seemed that it wouldn't work. What's up with those trees inside? He had been deliberately provoking the other party before and had not asked the ANBU in detail until now, when he finally spoke. That was the secret technique of the first Hokage. The white robe answered him. Orochimaru used the forbidden technique of impure world reincarnation to summon the 2 previous Hokages to the present world. No wonder I heard such a violent vibration at the scene below. Hearing this, Mingshin suddenly understood and then circled around the 4 purple flame formation a few times. The 4 sound ninjas in the barrier saw his behavior so strange, and although they were puzzled, they did not dare to move rashly and let him move. "This kid is so suspicious. What is he observing?" The six-handed sound ninja muttered in confusion, unable to guess his behavior. TSK. "Kid Omaru, why do you care what he wants to do? Anyway, this kid can't get in." Sakun said to him with disdain. "Mingshin, what are you looking for?" Xiaoli looked at Mingshin, who had come back and couldn't help but ask him curiously, "If possible, I can help you find it." "No, Xiaoli, not now." After saying that, he shook his head helplessly and walked back to the others, thinking to himself, "This barrier is really tricky." Mingshin thought about it and took out a small scroll from his waist bag, and with a bang, a piece of pork appeared. "Hey, why do you carry a piece of pork with you?" The white-robed ANBU ninja looked at the piece of meat in his hand and asked in confusion. "When I came back from the Fire Country after a mission a few days ago, I heard a traveler I met on the road say that there are too many people raising pigs in our country in recent years, and the price of pork has fallen sharply. I took note of it. As soon as I arrived at the gate yesterday, I took the time to go to the village store to buy pork. I didn't have time to bring it back to make a dish." Speaking of this, he shook his head and sighed. "If it weren't for my quick eyes and hands, this piece of pork would have been snapped up by the neighbor next door." It was not easy. The ANBU members were quite speechless and wanted to ask him, "Do you really need to do that?" Ming-Shan didn't care what they thought and directly threw the pork towards the light wall with one hand. As soon as it touched, the piece of meat was roasted and burned to ashes in just a moment. It's not easy to crack. Xiaoli's face became solemn after seeing this scene. Yes. Ming-Shan also echoed and took out a bottle from his arms. Now we can only try using that skill. That. Xiaoli looked at Ming-Shan, not knowing why. Ming-Shan didn't say anything. He poured himself 2 Binglian pills, put them in his mouth, and put the bottle away again. What is he doing? Several ANBU people didn't understand what he was going to do. Chapter 130 Breakthrough. He walked straight to the other side, a few steps away from the dark purple light wall. After standing still, he urged everyone in the distance, come here quickly, and stand behind me. What is he doing? The ANBU and Xiaoli looked at each other, both puzzled. You will understand clearly later, Ming-Shan said, looking straight ahead and raising his hands to busy himself with seals. Let's all go over and see what he is going to do. The white robe thought and said to everyone. Everyone, including Xiaoli, nodded in agreement. They gradually approached and saw Ming-Shan concentrating on making seals. Is that hand gesture the seal of the Tiger Senior? The new member next to the white robe ANBU asked him after observing carefully. That's right. The white robe also noticed that Ming-Shan's hand seal was unusual and exclaimed, it's not a water escape hand seal, nor an earth escape hand seal. What is that? The new member asked him. I don't know either. The white robe shook his head calmly, but after we wait for him to start the technique, we should know what kind of ninjutsu it is. That's right. At this moment, in the 4 purple flame formation, in the same timeline. Finally caught you. Orochimaru walked under the tree, looked up at the 3rd Hokage, who was tied up tightly by vines, and said softly, Teacher Sarutobi. The 3rd Hokage did not say anything to respond to Orochimaru's sarcastic words, but stretched out his hand with difficulty, pressed it on the tree in front of him with great effort, and shouted, Ninjutsu summoning technique. He called out, show yourself, Monkey King Shanmo. Squeak. Bang. A burst of white smoke suddenly appeared, and Orochimaru's eyes narrowed slightly. TSK, a troublesome thing has appeared. The old Monkey King, Tsurumo. A white-haired bronze monkey slowly walked forward a few steps, looked down at the pale face below, and said expressionlessly, Orochimaru, is it really like this? It glanced at the 3rd Hokage who was tightly entangled by vines behind it. How pathetic, Sarutobi. It's all your fault for being so kind that you didn't want to kill him. Then do it now, old friend. The 3rd Hokage said helplessly. Oh, it's too late. Tsurumo shook his head and sighed. The 3rd Hokage exerted force on his hands, trying to break free but couldn't, so he had to entrust the old monkey, please, Tsurumo, the Vajra stick. When Orochimaru heard this, his face changed drastically, and he immediately ordered the 2 Hokage around him, kill him, don't let that guy transform. Swish, swish. The 2 Hokage followed Orochimaru's instructions mechanically, and started to climb up. Seeing this, the monkey demon nodded and responded to the 3rd Hokage. Okay, I got it. As soon as the voice fell, it punched the 2nd Hokage who was rushing towards it, knocking him down under the tree, and with the other hand directly knocked away the 1st Hokage who was kicking at it, then took the opportunity to jump to the other side, spread his body, and shouted, transform. Bang. Whoosh. In the white smoke, a long black straight stick flew towards the 3rd Hokage, and in a few strokes, it cleared and cut off the vines tied to his body. Very good. The 3rd Hokage jumped up and stretched out his hand to take the Vajra stick. Just as Orochimaru and the 3rd Hokage were about to fight to the death, suddenly, outside the 4 purple flame formation, several people stood behind Ming-Shan, waiting silently. His seals became faster and faster, and his hand movements became faster and faster. Snap. With the last palms suddenly clasped together, Ming-Shan finally completed the technique, staring at the front and shouting, would release, tree world birth. Crack, crack. Hey, what's that sound? A sound of expansion full of vitality filled everyone's ears, and when they heard it, their hearts were shaken and frightened. Something strange happened. The bricks and tiles on the ground around them suddenly began to roll violently, like a pot of boiling water, making a ping pong sound. Not only them, but even the 4 sound ninjas in the barrier slowly felt this fluctuation, and the ground was also shaking violently. What's going on? Saken looked at the strange things happening in front of him and under his feet, and his heart was in doubt. The other 3 were not much better. This is. Zai only relied on his own strong physical training to barely stand on the bricks and tiles, and did not shake with the ground. But before he could sigh and ask questions, the roof began to change again. Crack, crack. The ground was shaking constantly, and suddenly countless green trees broke through the cracks of the tiles and jumped onto the roof ridges, like weeds after rain, growing densely and wildly on the roof, even more amazing than the forest in the barrier. How is it possible? The white-robed ANBU and other members were shocked, looking at Mingshan with incredible eyes, secretly surprised. He can actually activate the secret technique that only the first generation Hokage can use? Is this would release? Zaioli, no matter how slow he was at this time, came back to his senses and understood. Mingshan actually has the bloodline limit ability that the first generation Hokage has. He looked at the back in front of him with complicated eyes and exclaimed sincerely, Mingshan, so amazing. At this time, even the many jonin at the scene of the competition also noticed this amazing technique. Kakashi was the first to sense it. After repelling a soldier, he suddenly turned around and looked up. That's it. Around the plaque of number 1 in the world, many thick tree roots broke through the wall and entangled with each other like pythons. This can't be the wood release performed by Yamato. It can only be him. He knew it very clearly in his mind. I didn't expect that this child's cultivation has grown to this level. Chakra has become the source of life for the sea of trees. Kei was no less shocked than Kakashi, even more shocked. Could it be that this ninjutsu? Yes. Kakashi replied to Kei. It's the same as the secret technique in the barrier we saw before. The same as the birth of the tree world. What a powerful ninjutsu. Han looked at the green trees that were still bursting out from the bricks and tiles. At that time, the forest created by the first generation of Hokage in the barrier was blocked by the light wall, and she was fighting with the enemy in the audience and had no time to pay attention. She was far less shocked by the tree world descent performed by Mingshan now. She murmured in a low voice, is this the legendary wood escape that pacified the ninja world and established the hidden leaf village in the land of fire? Mingshan. Hong Dao looked up. After seeing this shocking scene, she felt quite complicated. She was not as shocked and surprised as others. She knew that he could use wood escape a long time ago. After a rough pondering, she gathered her mind and continued to attack the enemy with Kyuubi in hand. The veins on Mingshan's back of his hand bulged. He accelerated his chakra to rush into the ground fiercely, causing the sea of trees to break through the shackles and grow, passing through the bricks and tiles with amazing momentum and rushing towards the light wall. Thick branches and vines were like whips wrapped in special polyester silk, hitting the wall with sharp wind-breaking sounds as they were swung. Snap, squeak, squeak. Every time Mingshan drives an attack, the branches and vines will inevitably be burned by the heat of the light wall, making a crackling sound. However, the more this happens, the more Mingshan roars and roars, and he increases the intensity of his chakra input extremely frantically. Arsehole. Seeing the light wall shaking continuously, Taoa cursed, but he could do nothing about the culprit. Not good. Kidomaru saw that the barrier was unstable under the continuous attacks of the vines, and the ripples spread. Even if it can be stabilized now, he estimated that it would not last long, and he thought hard about countermeasures. Damn it, how can he know how to use this kind of wood escape ninjutsu? Saken stared at Mingshan with his eyes fixed, very annoyed. Swish, swish. The 2 Hokages numbly jumped and dodged between the tree roots and vines that swarmed out of the ground. Damn it, could it be? Orochimaru jumped up and down between the trees in the barrier, dodging the vines. After jumping to the top of a tall tree, he looked down at the tiles on the ground and felt very tricky. The situation was just like when the first Hokage used the secret technique of tree world descent to capture the third Hokage. The branches were crisscrossing and entangled, growing disorderly and squeezing each other. This annoying wouldn't fly. Orochimaru shook the blue Magatama earrings on his earlobes, his face so gloomy that water could drip out of it. He regretted it very much in his heart. Back in the forest of death, I shouldn't have bothered to let that fly go and let him make trouble at this critical moment. The third Hokage, who was on the tree trunk opposite Orochimaru, laughed out loud with joy when he heard the traitor say this. He knew very well that at this moment, apart from the first Hokage who was summoned by the impure world reincarnation, only that person could do it and perform this technique. What are you laughing at? Orochimaru was in a bad mood right now. Seeing the third Hokage laughing so inappropriately, he felt very unhappy and reminded him gloomily, don't forget, you are also in the barrier now. He didn't say anything, but just raised his head slightly, looking up at the thick green vines that kept crisscrossing and covering in the air with satisfaction. The third Hokage didn't mind how ugly his expression would be at this moment, and said to himself, where Konoha is flying, the fire will also continue. HMPH, forget it. Orochimaru pressed his abdomen hard with both hands, raised his head, and tried to open his upper and lower jaws. A snake came out of its mouth, and a sharp sword with a cold light and shadow gushed out of the snake's mouth. He took it in his hand, pointed it directly at the third Hokage, and said, it's finally getting interesting. Is he going to use the Kusanagi sword? Seeing this, the third Hokage gathered his mind, got into a fighting state, swung his stick and shouted, it's time, monkey demon. TSK, even if you have an indestructible body, it will still hurt if you collide with the Kusanagi sword. The voice of the old monkey came from the black stick, saying so. Whoosh. The third Hokage jumped straight up, leaped into the air, and took the initiative to attack Orochimaru. Thanks, my husband, for the recommendation vote on Saturday. Special thanks to Brother Mechanical vs God of War, for the monthly vote this morning. Chapter 131, Forced Defeat. Squeak, squeak. TSK, isn't that enough? Mingshin, who had been driving the trees to hit the light wall, saw that the vines had been burned by the flames before the wall was broken through. He gritted his teeth and thought to himself, then I'll try harder. He decisively chewed the Binglian pill in his mouth and swallowed it to increase the output. Drink. He opened his eyes as wide as possible, and even the ends of his hair on both sides were blown straight up by the chakra airflow that kept gushing out of his body. Crack. Snap. Above the four purple flame formations, the flame light wall was attacked by thick trees and vines one after another, as if the forest here could not be burned out. Ding, a barely perceptible crackling sound was heard. Not good. Jirafang, who had been silent and trying to maintain the stability of the barrier, raised his head after hearing the sound and saw that the originally smooth and flawless dark purple wall was touched by a small branch, making a crackling sound. Although it was set on fire as expected, he was careful and soon found the problem. The branch had left a small bright crack on the wall. Jirobo hurriedly called out to the other three people, Kidomaru, Sakan, Teiwaya. Shut up. Teiwaya heard him shouting and cursed. What are you shouting for, fat pig? What's wrong, Jirobo? What happened? Kidomaru and Sakan were not as arrogant as Teiwaya, but just asked him calmly. Look up quickly, Jirobo reminded loudly. Well, look up. The three people looked up, confused, and soon they were as surprised as Jirobo in front of them. How could this happen? La. The cracks on the bare wall collapsed more severely than the small gap Jirobo had seen just now, and stretched forward in a winding way. What should we do, Kidomaru? Jirobo asked his accomplices anxiously. TSK, we. Kidomaru was about to say something when Sakan interrupted their discussion with a shout. It's too late. Let's stop and leave. Crack, crack. Bang. Quick, retreat. Sakan finally yelled hysterically, and the few people were forced to flee before the barrier was completely broken, so as to avoid being tied up by the tree. When the huge forest net woven by tree trunks and vines covered the entire roof, Mingshin finally let go of his palm and collapsed on the ground in the forest because of excessive consumption of his own chakra. Hey, are you okay? The white-robed ANBU no longer had the contemptuous attitude before and bowed to him who was lying on the ground and stretched out his hand. Seeing this, Xiaoli also bowed and stretched out his hand on the other side of Mingshin, saying to him, come, I'll help you up, Mingshin. The two of them cooperated and helped each other up. Tomorrow, you should practice more on physical skills. Xiaoli shook his head and taught him earnestly, you're so exhausted after just using one ninjutsu. Brother, why don't you try launching an AoE for a long time? Mingshan was so tired that he was out of breath. He rolled his eyes at the watermelon-headed guy. See if it's tiring? Although I know nothing about ninjutsu, it shouldn't be more tiring than using physical skills at a high intensity. Although Zayoli didn't understand what AoE was, it didn't affect his serious rebuttal. When several ANBU members heard what he said, they all looked at each other and complained in their hearts. There is such a saying. Mingshan clenched his fists and wanted to kill this watermelon-headed guy. He cursed him secretly. If I hadn't been taking drugs to maintain high-intensity chakra output, how could this 4 purple flame formation be broken so quickly? Ahem. Seeing that Mingshan's face was not right, the white-robed ANBU quickly interrupted what Zayoli wanted to say next, diverting everyone's attention and asking other questions. Mingshan, why didn't the branches and vines you used just now affect and ignite other trees when they hit the light wall? Yeah, how did you do that? Zayoli blinked his focused big eyes and looked at Mingshan. I want to know too. Hey, just talk, don't stare so wide, okay? Mingshan's eyebrows twitched, and he wiped the sweat from his forehead. You're not Peppa Pig. Peppa Pig? Zayoli was full of confusion. Well, don't worry about these insignificant details. Actually, Mingshan coughed dryly and explained. To put it bluntly, it's very simple, not that complicated. At the moment when the branch hit the light wall and was ignited, I directly cut off a small part of the tree trunk that was about to be burned, and then continued to infuse chakra to make it grow again. He took out a small bottle from his arms, cut it when it hits and burns, and then continue to grow, and hit after cutting. I repeated this cycle and barely broke the barrier. Strange. The white-robed ANBU asked him puzzledly. As far as I know, after the secret technique of tree world descent is activated, the caster can absorb chakra by manipulating the vines of giant trees. He continued to point out, why don't you manipulate the trees to directly absorb the chakra of the barrier tomorrow? This is more convenient and quicker. Hey senior, how do you know so much? The newcomer beside him looked at the white-robed ANBU in confusion. When I was sorting documents in the archives, I accidentally read these secrets about would release, so. The white-robed ANBU briefly explained to the newcomer, and then continued to wait for his answer. I don't manipulate trees to absorb the barrier chakra, because I can't do it. Mingshan helplessly spread his hands, and said to everyone frankly, I can only roughly master this secret technique at present. Many problems in the details have not been completely solved, and I'm far from being able to fully control it. I see. The white-robed ANBU suddenly realized, but then he thought, even if Mingshan can only roughly master the tree world birth, it is already surprising enough. After all, the first generation Hokage is just a ghost temporarily summoned by Orochimaru, but Mingshan is different. He is a living person, only 14 years old, and there are infinite possibilities in the future. When the white-robed ANBU thought of this, the look he looked at Mingshan at this time was the same as the 3 generations of Hokage, both surprised and happy. Ding, clang, bang. Zayoli suddenly listened to the sound of fierce fighting in the forest. Then he remembered that he and Mingshan came to the roof to rescue the 3rd Hokage. He hurriedly said, let's talk later. The Hokage is still fighting Orochimaru inside. Let's hurry over to support him. Hearing Zayoli say this, the ANBU and Mingshan came to their senses. Thinking that the 3rd Hokage was still in danger, they quickly stopped talking and set off together. Swish, swish. A group of people rushed to the forest to rescue the 3rd Hokage. Are you okay? No, nothing. Guji, who was covered in injuries, held the ninja sword with his back to Kimimaro and asked with concern. Huh. The girl was also seriously injured. She stood between the two of them to cooperate with each other to confront the enemy. Crack. Bang. The crystal knife on Hanglian's arm broke with a sound, and her expression was embarrassed. You are really annoying. She was injured as much as the other party. Now both sides were exhausted, and their chakra was almost exhausted. Chapter 130 to the collision between Corpse Vein and Crystal Escape. Heh, same here. Kimimaro replied in a low short voice. Thank you for returning the Book of Seals. Bullhead. Hanglian shouted to one side. I'm here. A big man responded respectfully. How many troops do we have left? Hanglian asked him expressionlessly while on guard. No more. The team that Kabuto assigned to us has already. No need to say more, I know. Master Hanglian. The mask on Gewu's face was shattered at some point, leaving a shocking knife wound on his lips. He asked her, what should we do? The Book of Seals was still taken by them. Pa! Exclamation mark. Hanglian suddenly slapped his injured face. Shut up. His tone was extremely cold and cruel. Useless trash. You can't even keep an eye on your things, and you let the other party snatch the Book of Seals so easily. How could Master Orochimaru send a piece of trash like you to assist me? He was extremely angry and resisted the urge to kill him on the spot. Ahem. Gewu was slapped hard on the face, blood dripping down his cheeks. He dared not resist at all. He really did not expect that the white-haired boy opposite him would be so difficult to deal with. He could actually forcibly take back the sealed book under Hanglian's nose. Ugh. Kimimaro, who was originally using both hands to support the bone knife in the sealing technique to barely rest against Hanglian, suddenly couldn't suppress the surging impulse in his chest and lungs. His throat felt sweet, and he lowered his head and coughed up blood. The blood splashed on the ground and stained the scroll at his feet red. Hey, brother Kimimaro. Guji and Aang shouted at the same time. The girl walked to Kimimaro regardless of the danger and helped him calm down. Don't use the power of the corpse bone vein anymore, brother Kimimaro. Her face was covered with tears, and she wanted to say something else. Be careful. As soon as Guji said this, he blocked in front of her in an instant and knocked away more than a dozen crystal shuriken that were attacking him. Ding, ding. Hanglian flashed through Guji and Aang and attacked, fighting desperately with Kimimaro, who was about to give up, trying to take back the sealed book. Guji was about to rush to help Kimimaro with his sword. Whoosh. The burly man suddenly appeared in front of him and said dully, your opponent is me. Ding, ding. Little ghost, don't hinder us anymore. Gewu, with blood on his face, used a kunai to block Aang's support, threatening and warning her in a seemingly gentle, but actually sinister way. Get out of the way, ugly bastard. The wild girl glared at him and shouted at him unconvinced, and the two began to fight each other. Dang. Snap. Hanglian and Kimimaro fought wildly, turned over and jumped, and took advantage of the situation to form a seal with one hand. Crystal escape, breaking the crystal and subduing the dragon. Crystallized out of thin air into a huge dragon and flew into the air. She stepped on his head, whoosh, whoosh, driving the crystal dragon to swoop down towards Kimimaro. Bang, bang, bang. Kimimaro opened his 5 fingers and aimed at the crystal dragon and fired a burst of bone bullets. Although some hit, the effect was not great. Bang. He barely avoided the impact of the dragon head and dodged to the dragon's tail. His right hand quickly organized and hardened the bones. He swung his arm and turned it into a spiral bone spear. He shouted, Dance of the Iron Wire Flower. Flower. Cap. Cap. He actually thrust the bone spear all the way up from the dragon's tail. Wherever he passed, the crystals shattered. TSK. Damn it, don't you have any other trick besides this one? Hanglian was very unhappy when he saw this scene when the dragon head turned around. He swung his hands. Whoosh, whoosh. Several snowflake-shaped crystal shurikens rushed towards Kimimaro. Ding, ding, ding. Before they got close, they were shot down one by Kimimaro with bone bullets. I'm so sorry, I don't have anything to show for it except my bones. Kimimaro apologized to her with an extremely pale face, but he didn't slow down his attack at all. With a low roar, he suddenly exerted force to penetrate the crystal dragon. Bang, clang. The two of them tilted and fought in midair and fell to the ruins on the side of the street together. Boom. A large amount of dust was raised, covering the surroundings. Swish, swish. Tsunade-sama, look. Shizune held Tantan and raised her hand to point to the street full of corpses. That seems to be Jun. She was about to talk about the situation ahead, but found that Tsunade was trembling inexplicably and fell into panic. Tsunade-sama? Shizune was startled at first, then gritted her teeth and shook her twice. Tsunade-sama. After a long moment, she finally came to her senses and looked at Shizune, her eyes full of fear. What's wrong, Shizune? It seems that Hotaru and Kimimaro are fighting the enemy on the street over there. Let's go support them. Tsunade-sama. Shizune tried to discuss with her. Okay. Tsunade turned her eyes away, deliberately not looking at Shizune, and said, I will send the living slug to assist you. She only said you, and she had no intention of taking action. Tsunade-sama. Shizune was helpless, knowing very well why she was like this. Originally, after helping to escort the transfer of the wounded, they planned to return to their home tomorrow. The two were walking on the street when they heard fierce fighting and screams coming from the street. They hurried over. Unfortunately, Tsunade saw the shocking bloodstains on the ground, and her old problem broke out again. Alas, when can this hemophobia be cured? Shizune was very sad. After a flustered summoning seal, Tsunade finally succeeded in summoning her summoning beast with a bang. The white smoke dispersed, and a slug with a blue and white appearance and larger than an ordinary person appeared in front of the two. Its body surface was wet with mucus. Tsunade-sama. The living slug asked her respectfully, you summoned me out, what do you want? Living slug, this time you assist Shizune, and we will fight together. Tsunade took the pig from Shizune's arms, and ordered it very unnaturally. Okay, I understand. The slug nodded, and turned to look at Shizune. Living slug, please cooperate with me, like you did in the hospital just now. Shizune asked it. No problem. The living slug said, and immediately split into several petite versions of itself. I'm ready. Well, then let's go, and rush over to support. Lady Tsunade will wait for us here. Okay. At this moment, on the plaque of the world's #1, because of the wood release ninjutsu tree world birth that will be launched tomorrow, the roof of the entire building is now covered by this counterintuitive natural miracle. Looking from the bottom up, it has completely turned into a whole green ocean. Ding, ding, ding. Through the dense leaves in the forest, you can see many black shadows flashing across, and the sound of metal collisions is endless. Chapter 133, Battle in the Forest. TSK. The white-robed ANBU and several other members were trapped on the ground, and tried to raise their arms, trying to get rid of the milky white spider silk with mucus. Damn, I still can't get rid of it. Senior, what's wrong with this silk? The black-robed ANBU rookie held a kunai to cut the spider silk on his hand, and found that he couldn't cut it. The spider silk is gradually sucking us. The white-robed analyzed. I'm afraid that the six-handed sound ninja mixed chakra into his body fluids to make such sticky silk. Darn. Ta. Konoha whirlwind. At the entanglement between the two treetops, Zaioli shouted, and turned and kicked back Jirobo's new wave of attacks. The two were evenly matched, and fighting each other fiercely. Hey, are you kidding me? Mingshin, who was on the tree trunk below Zaioli, was ambushed as soon as he entered the forest. His whole body was tied up tightly by spider silk like the ANBU members, and he couldn't move. He looked at the three people standing in front of him, and he was very troubled. He complained to them, do you really want to target me like this? Boy, you must die today. You dare to hinder Lord Orochimaru. Saken's face was covered with dense and strange runes, and his veins were bulging, which looked particularly creepy. He stared at Mingshin with a fierce look, and his mood was very bad. Hey, don't be like this for now, Saken. Kidomaru, who also had strange runes on his face, was very unhappy to see Saken's murderous words to Mingshin, and said, leave him to me to play with first. What's so fun, idiot? Doi was also unhappy, and said to him, he almost ruined our entire operation, kill him quickly. Oh, really, you are so boring. Seeing that the two of them disagreed, Kidomaru had no choice but to give up the plan to play with Mingshin. Hey, judging from your age, you are at most the same age as me. Shut up, you bastard. Mingshin was interrupted by Teiwa's angry scolding before he could finish his words. Mingshin shook his head and sighed, looking at Teiwa with sympathy. Are you really a bastard born by a father, but not taught by a mother? You just curse at me. He retorted without any hesitation. Asshole, what did you say? Teiwa was furious. If you have the guts, say it again. Her face was ferocious, and her body leaned forward slightly, as if she was about to pounce on him. Tut. Unexpectedly, Saken grabbed her arm for no reason. Hey, wait a minute, Teiwa. Get out of the way. Teiwa was impatient with Saken's nonsense, and her arm broke free, and ran straight towards Mingshin. Saken, why are you stopping her? Kidomaru smiled evilly, and he stretched out 6 hands. to pull out 6 strands of spider silk with special shapes from his mouth. Ninjutsu, spider sticky gold. TSK, whatever you want. Sakan said, and also raised his foot to rush forward, killing Mingshin. Seeing Taewire getting closer and closer, followed closely by Zeduojin, Mingshin was not worried about his own safety at all. Instead, he was interested in speculating what Kidomaru's new spider silk was for, thinking to himself, the color of this spider silk is different from before, what is he going to do? Snap. Kidomaru tore off the sticky silk in his mouth, and twisted the 6 strands of khaki sticky things in his hand into a short-handled weapon, which gradually straightened and grew spikes. Is he gradually hardening his weapon? Mingshin saw something. When they were still a few steps away, Taewire anxiously took out a flute from her bosom and quickly approached him. Prepare to die. Choke. She spun the flute, and sharp tips protruded from both ends. Hey, are you going to stab me to death with the flute? Mingshin looked at the weapon in Taewire's hand, curled his lips, and laughed at himself. This is a really cowardly way to die. Don't worry, it won't be that easy. Kidomaru pointed the 6 weapons in his hand at Mingshin and kindly reminded him, I will make your death as painful as possible. Whoosh, whoosh. As soon as he finished speaking, he swung his hand and threw 6 special weapons at Mingshin. Swish. In the blink of an eye, Taewire rushed close to him. Swish. The tip of the flute pierced his throat. Puff. Kidomaru's attack followed and stabbed into various parts of his body one by one. Humph. Waste is still waste. Before Taewire finished mocking, she was surprised to see that Mingshin's body was strangely fading into a wooden state. Not good. Sakan, who caught up a few steps later than Taewire, said in shock, get away from that kid, Taewire. Puff. Before she could jump away, Taewire was entangled by the branches. Damn it. She struggled with both hands to free herself, but it was in vain. The branches were very tight. Whoosh. 2 shuriken came through the wind and rushed towards Taewire. Seeing that they were about to get close to her, she struggled harder and harder, trying to avoid the attack before it happened. Swish, swish. Before Taewire could successfully get rid of the branches, Sakan blocked the ninja tools one by one with his bare hands, just as the shuriken were about to get close to her. Clang, clang. Suddenly, beside the 2 people, there was a ping pong sound of weapons blocking. TSK. Mingshin held a knife in his mouth and hung upside down on a tree trunk. Seeing that the sneak attack failed, he turned over and jumped to join Xiaoli. He threw 2 shuriken to the ground quickly and swished, swished, cutting the spider silk stuck to the white-robed ANBU people. Swish, swished, swished. The people dispersed and dodged as soon as they were freed. Impossible. Kidomaru looked at him in disbelief as he cut off the spider silk of several people. How can 2 iron shurikens cut off my silk? Well, 2 ordinary iron shurikens certainly can't easily cut off your silk. Didn't the old man just say that? Mingshin casually interrupted Kidomaru's doubts and pointed at the white-robed ANBU in the distance. The actual strength of your thing is that even 2 elephants can't break it. As he said that, he took out a shuriken from his waist bag. But if the shuriken is injected with chakra, it will be easy to cut off your thing. After saying that, he didn't forget to look at him with a squinting look on his face. TSK. Kidomaru was very unhappy to hear him say that. Boy, don't be too proud. Soon he pulled out 6 more weapons from his mouth. You bastard. Taewire, who had just broken free, looked up at Mingshin. She was very angry now. She was deeply stimulated by his indifferent attitude. The runes on her body became bright again, and a surprising change occurred. Hey, Taewire, you're not going to stay here. Kidomaru said in surprise when he saw the changes in the runes on her face. Hey, why don't you switch to state 2 now? When will you wait? Sakan didn't care. This guy is quite annoying. That's right. Kidomaru thought to himself. It was true. Anyway, his chakra must be running low at this moment. Let's make a quick decision. He also started, and the runes on his face began to change. Chapter 134 Curse. Sakan laughed strangely a few times and followed the crowd to activate the so-called State 2. Jirobo saw the runes of the 3 of them change, and after thinking about it, he simply activated the State 2. Not good. Mingshin. Xiaoli retreated cautiously to his side and said, they seem to have undergone some changes, and their chakra is more weird than the rune state just now. Who cares? Mingshan swung his sword twice indifferently. When the enemy comes, the general will stop him, and when the water comes, the earth will cover it. Swish, swish. The ANBU members jumped to the tree trunk near the two of them, and the white robe said, Mingshan, leave these scum to Xiaoli and me. He glanced around. You guys go and protect the hostage. How can this be? The white robe was about to refuse the rune. They just go. Mingshan bowed and prepared, not intending to say anything more to the ANBU. We have different responsibilities. Senior. The newcomer cast his eyes on the white robe. The man in white robe glanced at the four sound ninjas, then glanced at Mingshan and Xiaoli. After hesitating for a moment, he made up his mind and said, Mingshan, you guys better be careful. After that, he used gestures to guide the other ANBU members to pass by Mingshan and Xiaoli and head straight for the third hostage in the forest. After watching the ANBU members leave, Xiaoli retracted his eyes and stared at his opponent, who was undergoing an amazing transformation. After the previous battle, he said worriedly, Mingshan, it will be too difficult for the two of us to deal with them. Well, I don't deny that our situation is very delicate now. Mingshan paused, but in the current situation, I need to apply the slogan that you and Teacher K often say. The one that Teacher K and I often use. Xiaoli was puzzled, and Mingshan stretched his neck and pointed out to him, isn't youth about facing challenges? Mingshan, have you forgotten what Teacher K taught us every day, that on the Shura road of ninja, there is no smooth road to take, and only those who overcome difficulties and climb along the steep mountain road can hope to reach the glorious pinnacle? Oh, indeed. Xiaoli suddenly became enlightened after hearing this, turned his head, and looked at him. His eyes seemed to be burning with fire. You are so right. TSK, this idiot. Mingshan was very treacherous, thinking to himself, as expected, as long as you shout a few slogans at him, he will easily take the bait. On the surface, he pretended to agree with this guy, taking the opportunity to cheer him up and seduce him. Let's protect Konoha and our homeland with our blood, Xiaoli. Yeah, okay. Xiaoli responded to Mingshan excitedly, and still silently said, ashamed in his heart, I misunderstood him before. Hey, Kit, what did you say we are just now? Jirobo, who was standing opposite the two of them, had just changed his state. When he heard what Mingshan said to the ANBU, he was very arrogant and unhappy and said, scum, huh. Xiaoli and Mingshan heard this, and they stopped talking nonsense, and looked back at Jirobo. Swish, swish. As soon as he finished speaking, several people nearby also jumped up, and stood behind Jirobo. TSK, you look like you are at most my age, but you keep calling me brat. Mingshan scratched his itchy ear with his little finger while talking. Aren't you bored? Humph, you can just bark a few more times while you can. Zuojin suddenly turned his head and said, brother. Got it. The head that had been hanging behind him actually moved and spoke. What's going on? Xiaoli looked at the head in surprise. It moved in front of them under their noses, and looked up at each other. This guy is a conjoined twin, probably. Mingshan analyzed. Well, you can think so. We are brothers with a good relationship. Zuojin explained calmly. Usually, my big brother Yukon is asleep in the body. He will only wake up to help me when we encounter a critical battle. Unbelievable. Xiaoli was solemn and alert, and felt that they were more and more difficult to deal with. Yukon can extend his head and limbs from any part of my body to attack and defend. Just as Sakan wanted to say a few more words, with a snap, a hand suddenly emerged from his chest and covered his mouth. I don't have time to listen to you talking to them slowly about this nonsense, Sakan. The other head said, hurry up and get rid of them. Got it, brother. Sakan sneered, you are still the same, so impatient. TSK. Mingshan looked at the two heads talking with disdain. Be careful not to hit yourself in both faces. Bah. Jirobo spat a mouthful of thick phlegm on the ground. You're finished. He moved his red arms and crackled his joints. I can tell you that no one can defeat this state where the power of the curse is increased by more than 10 times. 10 times? Xiaoli was very surprised. They just changed their appearance, and their chakra had such an amazing increase. You are a useless person with no power, but you still want to show off. Jirobo sneered and glared at them. You are just courting death. You don't have much chakra left, you seaweed-headed kid. Kidomaru stared at Mingshan and said sinisterly. Your name is Kidomaru, right? Hearing this, Mingshan moved his eyes to him and asked instead of answering. What's wrong? Do you want to beg for mercy from us? Kidomaru asked him teasingly. Sure. Don't surrender, I've been wondering. Mingshan yawned. What on earth are these curses and states you always talk about? That was given to us by Lord Orochimaru. Kidomaru was about to show off, but unexpectedly. Shut up. Teiwaya scolded him impatiently. Why are you explaining so much to this rubbish? Teiwaya was right this time. Why are you explaining so much to a dying person? Sakan laughed very strangely and echoed. Hey, you guys are such a jerk. Kidomaru had no choice but to shake his head and give up. Forget it. Teiwaya bit his thumb, quickly formed a seal, slapped the ground, and shouted, summoning technique. Bang. The white smoke dissipated, and 3 huge monsters appeared out of thin air. Hey, summon these guys out. Kidomaru looked at the 3 and said. What an idiot. How can I fight without summoning them? Teiwaya cursed Kidomaru, and turned to Mingshan and said coldly, let me play the melody of death for you. He raised his flute, and prepared to play it horizontally. This is bad. Zyoli also looked up slightly, looking at the 3 summoned beasts carefully. One was shirtless, tall and mighty, with his eyes covered by bandages and thick bone claws on his wrists. One was wearing a dark coat, with disheveled hair, covering his face, and holding an oversized iron rod. One had no arms, was wrapped in bandages, and stood there with only 2 feet. Chapter 135. 2 people in a hard fight. 3 more won't make a difference. 3 less won't make a difference. Mingshan was much calmer, and he started to act directly, discussing the division of labor with Zyoli. I'll be responsible for dealing with the disabled young man with 6 hands and the lost girl, Lee. You'll be responsible for dealing with the conjoined orphan, and the red pig. Understood. Zyoli adjusted his mentality, followed Mingshan's rhythm, and quickly attacked and started fighting with the other party. Asshole. You're looking for death. Bang. Clang. Just as the sound ninjas were fighting Mingshan and Zyoli, in a place far away from the group's fight, several black shadows flashed back and forth quickly, and the crisp collision sound of metal blocking echoed very densely in the forest. Orochimaru swung his sword to sweep away the volley attack of the 3rd Hokage. After fighting each other for more than 10 rounds, the 2 Hokages who were wandering on the periphery saw the opportunity to rush in and join the battle. Soon, the situation gradually tilted in the direction he expected. The 3rd Hokage was too old, and his skills were no longer what they used to be. His chakra had already dropped significantly compared to before, and he was forced to fight hard with the traitor and the 2 Hokages. Although Orochimaru used the 2 Hokages who were reborn from the impure world reincarnation to easily control the situation on the scene, he did not dare to be careless at all, as he knew very well the strength of his teacher. Clang. Clang. The 3rd Hokage fought hard with Orochimaru and his friends, and although the Tsurumo helped to relieve a lot of pressure, he still could not get rid of the dilemma of fighting several people at the same time. Swish. Just when the 3rd Hokage was careless for a moment and exposed his back to Orochimaru's attack range, he was about to be stabbed by the Kusanagi sword. Whoosh, whoosh. Fire style, dragon fire technique. A high temperature and hot flame in the shape of a dragon rushed straight towards Orochimaru from mid-air. Boom. Orochimaru was forced to jump away from his original position because of the fire dragon attack, allowing the 3rd Hokage to barely avoid this killing move. Whoosh, whoosh. Hokage-sama. The ANBU members led by the white robes appeared in time and rushed to the side of the 3rd Hokage. In the confrontation, they asked, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. How did you break through the barrier outside?" the 3rd Hokage asked, after taking a look. "It was the Gale class." The white-robed ANBU answered the 3rd Hokage's question in detail. "Oh, I see." The 3rd Hokage nodded. "It's just as I guessed. This is something only that kid can do. TSK, boring." Orochimaru watched the 3rd Hokage and his subordinates talking and talking, standing there with his sword in hand, his face still the same. Whoosh, whoosh. "They're coming." The 2 black-robed ANBU heard the enemy's voice and quickly stood on both sides of the 3rd Hokage, ready to meet the enemy coming from the front. What troublesome minions. Orochimaru murmured and complained, but his hands were not idle at all. He was quickly making hand seals, obviously intending to clean up these troublesome soldiers at once. Not good. Looking at the hand seals, is Orochimaru going to use that ninjutsu? Upon seeing this, the third Hokage quickly ran towards Orochimaru, shaking his head and loudly ordering the ANBU, just help me delay the first and second Hokage for a while. Remember, don't fight the undead head on. That won't work. The white robe refused. How can we let you, Hokage, be alone? The ANBU's duty is to obey orders. Have you all forgotten this? We understand. The third Hokage said this, and the white robe had no choice but to follow his instructions and immediately join the battle against the two Hokage to delay time. Teacher, you are still the same as before, and you can't change this old habit. Humph, there is no point in talking more. Watch this. Whoosh, whoosh. Thick yellow arrows flew through Mingshan's body, and he shook his head and sighed. Your archery skills are too poor. TSK. Gui Tongwon was in a very bad mood, looking up at Mingshan who was moving at high speed and questioning, do you have eyes on your back? Hey, you discovered this secret. Mingshan stood on a tree trunk, turned his head to look at him, and a flute sounded in his ears, but he didn't pay any attention to it. I do have a third eye on my back that is always used to scout the surroundings. Do you want to know where it is hidden? Where is it hidden? Gui Tongwon blurted out without thinking. Arsehole. Mingshan revealed it seriously. Arsehole. Gui Tongwon, who was teased like this, was very annoyed and said, just wait for me. He spit out a large ball of white sticky silk from his mouth, threw it towards Mingshan with great force, and rushed over with a huge net. Hiss. Mingshan had just cut through the oncoming silk net with a knife, but unexpectedly, whoosh. There was a gust of wind coming from below, and his heart was pounding, and he subconsciously jumped away, to avoid it to the right. Bang! As soon as his feet left the tree, the trunk was smashed by a big iron rod. Mingshan repeatedly jumped into the air to avoid the giant. Before he could catch his breath, another one swung his bone claws, and attacked from his side. Clang, clang. After several consecutive attempts to block, his palms began to feel numb, and he secretly complained in his heart, damn it, what a joke, just blocking a few attacks from this behemoth. It's as if all the strength in my body has been drained. It wasn't over yet. The big guy without arms also took advantage of Mingshan's fight with the bone claw giant, and rushed over fiercely. The stick-wielding giant who had missed the previous attack also cooperated tacitly, and went around Mingshan's back, preparing to attack. Oh no, Mingshan is in danger. Xiaoli looked at the situation above the tree trunk. Bang. Ta. More punches. Saken waved his arms and shook out 3 hands, punching Xiaoli who was stunned. Whoosh. Unfortunately, he missed and didn't hit anyone. TSK. Damn it. Saken was disappointed. Just as he was about to move again, Yukon on his other shoulder said, Saken, pause for a moment. Don't just focus on fighting by yourself. You should cooperate with Jirobo to attack. This guy's too agile. Got it, brother. Saken put away his fist and followed Yukon's advice. Whoosh. A red shadow passed by like the wind. Rock attack. Jirobo passed by him and rushed towards Xiaoli. Not good. Xiaoli, who had just dodged to the side, saw Jirobo rushing towards him at high speed, so he quickly stood up and jumped away to avoid the attack. Bang. A punch hit the tree trunk, and it broke with a sound. If this punch hits me, it will be dangerous. Xiaoli was thinking about it, and thinking about countermeasures, but he didn't expect it. Where do you want to jump to? Saken had leaned over, and followed behind him without knowing when. Keep kicking. He grew 3 legs side by side, and attacked Xiaoli's waist at the same time. Bang. Boom. Xiaoli was kicked hard into the air by Saken, and Jirobo took the opportunity to fly in front of him, and said with a cruel smile, it's time to end it. Press down. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 136 Thick Eyebrows Determination. just as he was about to clench his hands into claws and attack Zyoli with his brute force. Whoosh! A shuriken came through the air and hit him in the face. Clang! Damn it! Seeing the approach, Jirobo was forced to wave his hands to knock off the threat of the shuriken. Zyoli took this opportunity to use a Konoha whirlwind, kicking away the two people in front and behind him, and dodged two other high-rise tree trunks to avoid. Boom. Bang. Because he threw the shuriken to rescue Zyoli, Mengshin was hit by the iron rod and bone claws at the same time. Poof. A mouthful of old blood spurted out directly. He quickly kicked his feet and retreated to the other side of the tree trunk in the distance, holding his hands and breathing. Fortunately, the three big guys didn't come up together, otherwise I would have to continue to hide. Unfortunately, this wooden board is in vain. It's useless. Blocks of wood broke and fell from his chest and back at the same time. This kid is really lucky. Kidomaru held a 5-foot-long earth gold war bow in both hands. At this time, his skin turned black, and there was a horn on each of his arms. His hair turned white and stood up. The third eye on his forehead opened and stared at Mengshin with a very speechless expression. Not only did he dodge the arrows I made with high-density sticky gold, but he also withstood the two heavy sticks when Teiwaya played the magic mirror chaos. TSK. Teiwaya flashed from the darkness with a flute in his hand and came to Kidomaru's side. He was very unhappy and said, "This kid is indeed difficult to deal with, but from now on, he won't be able to do whatever he wants." He was ready to use his own special skills to kill him. You have decided, so I should also express my opinion. Kidomaru teased and agreed with Teiwaya. He freed up 2 hands to make seals, and the other 4 hands were orderly drawing the bow and putting arrows. Seeing him busy tomorrow, Zyoli was speechless with envy. Having more hands has its benefits. Tomorrow, Zyoli saw that his situation was much more critical than his own, and secretly gritted his teeth and thought, "Teacher K, my companions are in a very critical situation now. I have to take that thing off. I'm sorry, I made this decision without your approval." He clenched his fists. "After repelling these enemies and Konoha returns to its former peace, I will punish myself by running around the village for 100 times. If I can't do it, I will be beaten with 5,000 straight punches." After Zyoli made up his mind, he sat down immediately, not caring about making noise, to let them know where he was, and began to dismantle the thing with the word root written on it tied to his leg. TSK, what is that thing that watermelon peel is holding in his hand? Hearing a strange sound from a tree, Sakan looked over curiously and found that Zyoli was busy dismantling something. Yukon looked up and took the initiative to explain to Sakan, "It should be something tied to the legs, with weights or something like that." Humph, no matter what tricks he comes up with, it's all in vain. Listening to the chat between the Sakan brothers, Jirobo just stared at Zigwapi with disdain. That guy just unloaded some heavy objects. How could it be possible? Before he finished mocking, he saw him gently release his hands and throw the 2 weight bags vertically to the ground. Bang. Boom. Exclamation mark. The entire roof shook violently, and everyone in the room could clearly feel the impact on the ground. What's going on? Orochimaru and the third Hokage, who were in the middle of the roof, both staggered 2 steps and almost fell over. "Hey, what is this?" When the loud rumbling sound reached K's ears, he was stunned. After dealing with the miscellaneous soldiers, he raised his head and looked up. Did Lee take those 2 pieces off? After thinking about it, he retracted his gaze, but he didn't mean to blame Zyoli, and murmured, "It seems that he has reached a time when he must take off that layer. You've gone too far, K." Kakashi, who happened to be next to him, heard him say this, and complained about her in his heart. The 4 sound ninjas couldn't be shocked at the same time, so they all cast their eyes on the green Zyoli. Damn it. Jirobo looked at Zyoli with a very interesting expression on his face, thinking to himself, what's going on? Did he tie such a heavy thing to fight us all the time? Hey, this is a bit exaggerated. Although Sakan looked incredible, Yukon was not much better. How heavy is he tied? I have a bad feeling. Kidomaru, who was below Zyoli, said with a serious face. Teiwaya looked over and asked him, what do you mean? My intuition tells me that this watermelon rind is very dangerous. Kidomaru answered without hiding anything. TSK, impossible. Tao's first reaction when he heard him say that was disbelief, just relying on that weakling. When Zyoli continued to play the flute music, he had no resistance to her illusion. If it weren't for that seaweed head who kept stirring up trouble to help, he would have been killed long ago. Fuck. Mingxin was not much better. He was knocked to the ground in an instant. When he raised his head again, pa, 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 Mingxin spit out a mouthful of mud and dirt, cursing. Damn, what is tied to his leg? It was simply a refresh of the basic understanding of weight bearing. Hey, Lee. Mingxin shouted at Zyoli, but before he could continue, he replied, Mingxin, don't worry, I will definitely defeat them and protect Konoha. TSK, no one wants to ask you this, bastard. Because of the distance, Zyoli did not see the blue veins on Mingxin's face bulging. He disappeared in an instant, probably because the fight had started. Forget it, let him be. That watermelon rind kid. Jirobo was shocked. Just when Zyoli attacked, he could not see where he ran to with his naked eyes. Damn, how could he be so fast? I didn't expect that he would unload the weight. Sakan leaned behind Jirobo, with his back to defend. Although he was cautious enough, he was hit hard in the face before he could finish his words. Yukon didn't even have time to defend himself. Bang, crack. At the moment of passing by, Zyoli took advantage of the fact that Sakan and Yukon were not able to react at the same time and broke the two horns on their heads with one punch. My horn. The two screamed in pain and reached out to touch their foreheads, but there was nothing. Zyoli's green figure continued to flash around them, so fast that it was unbelievable. Damn it. Jirobo threw several punches, all of which missed, and he was very angry. Taoya, who was standing below and looking up at the situation above, saw this scene and said unhappily, what a joke, that guy. When he raised his hand to pretend to play the flute. Ding. Ding. Two sticky gold kunai came unexpectedly and just brushed against Taoya's body, but someone used the other two to hit them in time and deviated from the attack trajectory. When did you get close? Taoya finally reacted from the shock and quickly jumped away to avoid it, but TSK, you still want to run? Mingxin flew out in a flash and stuck closely behind her. Chapter 137 Inhuman Things. Damn it, what's wrong with this guy? Doya turned around in frustration, not daring to fight him in close combat. She accelerated her running. She had been playing the flute for so long, but she didn't see him being affected by the illusion and being controlled by her like that watermelon rind. Swish. The seaweed head was like a dogskin plaster, and she couldn't get rid of it. I've been putting up with you for a long time, playing that broken flute all the time. It's so fucking noisy. Mingxin muttered as he swung his sword. Doya saw that he was attacking so fiercely that she didn't have time to mobilize the three big guys, so she had to hurriedly use the flute to try to parry. Clang. As expected, the flute was cut into two pieces by him, and just as he was about to continue to chop her down, whoosh, whoosh, two sticky golden arrows shot over one after the other, and Mingxin had to block the arrows first. Doya seized this opportunity, quickly dodged him, and hid back in the dark. TSK, this spider is really annoying. Mingxin was annoyed by the cold arrow. He turned around and stared at the six-handed sound ninja fiercely and continued to jump forward. TSK, has this guy run out of ninja tools? He actually picked up the kunai I made on the ground and used it to attack Taoya. Kidomaru, who was hiding somewhere in the forest, was furious. If he hadn't acted in time, Taoya would have been killed by his sneak attack. I don't believe you can always avoid it perfectly. He gritted his teeth and spit out another narrow strip of yellow clay from his mouth. He gradually injected chakra to harden it into an arrow. There were spiral patterns on the arrow. He took it in his hand and looked at it carefully and thought proudly, after shooting it out like this, the rotation speed has increased. Even if it hits a tree, it can directly penetrate the trunk and find him. Kidomaru drew his bow and arrow and was about to aim at Mingxin's wandering back. Whoosh. There was a sound of wind in his ears. Without thinking, Kidomaru changed the target of his bow and arrow. Bang. He shot out and hit Mingxin, who appeared in the distance beside him, but this was not the real person, and his whole body gradually faded into a wooden statue. TSK. Kidomaru looked at the wooden statue and was quite depressed. He quickly dodged and found another hidden place to continue shooting him. Not to mention, because of Mingshin's obstruction, Taehua was unable to play the flute to assist the upper level. Xiaoli was now fighting down from the tree trunk with the two of them. During the confrontation, he looked at Sakan and Jirobo, who were almost uninjured, and was very troubled. No matter how much I speed up, I still can't hurt them at all. In this case, he was about to untie the bandage on his wrist. I can only lead them to kick up in the air and try with the lotus. Bang. Ta. After dodging another heavy punch from Jirobo, Xiaoli began to run fast, running in circles with the two of them as a center, running faster and faster. TSK, what is this guy doing? Sakan's eyes couldn't keep up with his running speed. He could only barely see a light green figure spinning wildly around. He and Jirobo couldn't attack each other at all, so they could only choose to defend with their backs facing each other. Bang. Xiaoli stabbed into a gap in the backs of the two men, while spinning at super high speed, and successfully split them apart with a kick. Got it. Xiaoli seized this fleeting opportunity, and flashed under Sakan, shouting, "Shadow Dance Leaf." He kicked the opponent's chin, kicked him high into the air, and then performed further striking moves in the air. At this time, Jirobo reacted and looked back, to see the situation in the sky, but it was too late to block it. Dang. Ta. After hitting the enemy a few times, Xiaoli began to wrap Sakan tightly with bandages. He hugged the enemy and pulled his body down to spin at high speed. Take it, by Lionhua. Bang. It smashed straight through the roof, making a loud noise. Looks like it's quite lively outside right now. Orochimaru was feeling the vibration of an object slamming into the roof in the inner room, with a Kusanagi sword stuck in the ground behind him. He smiled at the opposite side and said, "What do you think, teacher?" The third Hokage, who had bruises all over his body, was panting and leaning on the Vajraruai stick, looking very listless. He had no time to pay attention to what Orochimaru said, and was thinking about the current situation. Sure enough, we still have to get rid of the two Hokage who are controlled by the impure world reincarnation first, otherwise. He glanced sideways and saw that several members of the ANBU were all seriously injured. The two reincarnated Hokage were wandering numbly on the left and right, looking for opportunities to attack. The third Hokage took a deep breath and made up his mind secretly, even for them, I have to use the fourth Hokage's ninjutsu. He raised his hands, put his palms together and said, "First generation, second generation, please forgive me." He glanced at the two of them resolutely. "I'm going to perform that forbidden technique." "Hey, teacher." Orochimaru walked behind Kusanagi's sword. "You seem to be breathing very fast. You are really old." Suddenly, he felt sorry for him for no reason and said, "I have never seen you look so painful." After saying that, he sneered again. "What's so funny?" the third Hokage asked. "It's really sad." Orochimaru put his hands on his face. "Even you who were once called the professor of ninjutsu can't resist the ravages of time." After gently tearing it, the true face in the painted skin was revealed. Then, what is that? What's going on? Who is that young girl? Several ANBU members were half lying on the ground, looking at the person in front of them who had taken off Orochimaru's face, and they were surprised and guessing each other. Even the third Hokage was extremely shocked after seeing this beautiful face. "Who are you? Is it because it's too sudden that you can't understand?" The voice was as gentle and crisp as a lark, and it made everyone who heard it shudder. "It's me, Orochimaru. Could it be that you?" The third Hokage couldn't believe it. "Have you completed that forbidden technique?" Orochimaru smiled sweetly at the third Hokage. "You are a guy who violates human ethics." The third Hokage raised his trembling hand and pointed at Orochimaru and scolded, "How dare you be so cruel?" When seeing the third Hokage accusing him so hoarsely, Orochimaru did not get angry, but laughed even louder. "That guy actually succeeded?" The black Ruai stick suddenly opened one eye after hearing Orochimaru's weird laughter. "The reason why I didn't choose you to take over as the fourth Hokage," said the third Hokage, heartbroken, "is because of your twisted thinking. Is there any point in talking about the past now?" On Orochimaru's new face, his long golden pupils fluttered and were strikingly similar to his original appearance. He looked so strange and charming as he smiled and answered the third Hokage, "Teacher Sarutobi." The third Hokage closed his eyes silently, and Sarutobi opened his eyes. Sarutobi. Seeing him in so much pain, I couldn't help but recall that scene back then. Thanks to my brother, who has poor biology and can prove my purity, for the recommendation vote he cast yesterday. Chapter 138, A Difference in Thought. Wow. In a dark sewer somewhere, the third Hokage led two elite ANBU members to a closed door. The third Hokage raised his hand to signal the two to sneak closer. When they got close to the door, they heard the unique sound that only occurs during medical operations. Bang! The two ANBU kicked the door open, and the third Hokage walked in slowly. After seeing the containers filled with various human organs on the shelves on both sides, he stared at the back in front of him silently. Finally you found me. Orochimaru, who had been busy on the operating table, said with his back to the third Hokage. What a pity. He turned his head to the side. Orochimaru, what are you doing? The third Hokage asked him. I was wondering who could get through all the traps I set up. Orochimaru did not answer the third Hokage directly. Instead, after seeing who was coming, he said casually, so it's you. In recent times, many genin, chunin, and even ANBU have disappeared in the village for no reason, and recently we have received information about your suspicious behavior. One of the ANBU members questioned Orochimaru. Lord Orochimaru, why would an outstanding ninja like you do such a thing? Another ANBU member was puzzled. So what if I did it? He asked with a sinister smile. Do you want to die in my hands too? The two ANBU became nervous when they heard it. Orochimaru, is it you who did it? The third Hokage asked sternly. Tell me, what are you doing here? Since you have found me, I can't keep it a secret any longer. Orochimaru turned around and said to them, I'm developing new ninjutsu. Orochimaru, you are using fellow villagers for human experiments, just for this kind of thing. The ANBU clenched his fist in anger and accused Orochimaru. Are you really researching forbidden techniques? The third Hokage looked at Orochimaru. What do you want by doing this kind of thing in secret? It's simple. Everything. You said everything. The light in the room was dim, flickering, and the third Hokage could no longer understand Orochimaru as he asked and answered questions with him. I want to learn all ninjutsu. Orochimaru confessed his ambition to the others, to understand all the truths in this world, just like the first person who mixed blue and yellow, and named the newly blended color green. I just want to do the same thing now. After hearing what Orochimaru said, the ANBU member who had accused him before shook his head in disagreement and said, it is already the limit for an ordinary ninja to master a dozen different ninjutsu. How is it possible to learn them all? Haha, that's the view of a frog in a well. If blue is chakra, then yellow is a seal, and green is ninjutsu. Orochimaru continued to tell them nonchalantly, since there are infinite types of colors, then there should be thousands of different ninjutsu in this world. After a slight pause, however, if you want to master all ninjutsu and truths, it will take a long time. He went straight to the core, and only those who can spend so much time to comprehend everything are qualified to be called the ultimate individual. Orochimaru said his long-standing conclusion. I think that the lifespan of the body is too short and illusory. Even if one is called a Hokage, once he dies, it means that all the past is over. Orochimaru, the ninjutsu you are hiding here to test, is it? After hearing the last part, the third Hokage had roughly guessed what kind of ninjutsu he had been studying. Yes, it is what you guessed. Orochimaru admitted generously, and revealed to them without any intention of hiding, the ninjutsu of immortality. It's really crazy. This is impossible. The two ANBU members said flatly, and they all thought he was daydreaming, while the third Hokage calmly raised his hand, and prepared to make a seal. Seeing the third Hokage like this, Orochimaru took a step forward and questioned him. Are you going to kill me? No answer. Ninjutsu, summoning technique. Bang! After the white smoke dissipated, the figure of the monkey demon appeared. Can you do it? Orochimaru didn't mind, just standing there. Teacher Sarutobi. He suddenly began to form seals, and before everyone could react, boom. A white light flashed, and in an instant, 2 rows of shelves collapsed, and even the lights on the top were destroyed. The two ANBU ninjas were killed on the spot, before they could do anything. Orochimaru easily passed the third Hokage. Kill him quickly, Sarutobi. Saruma shouted at the third Hokage. Now is the only chance. Unfortunately, the master and apprentice just looked at each other and had no intention of taking action at all. The third Hokage just let Orochimaru leave. Sarutobi, I'm sorry, I really can't do it. When Saruma closed his single eye and cut off this memory, the third Hokage could be said to be very regretful at this moment. Seizing another person's body, this forbidden reincarnation technique that makes you immortal. The third Hokage asked Orochimaru, how many people have you used this face and body on? This should be the second one. She explained to the third Hokage directly and honestly. If I'm not mistaken, you probably have another goal in attacking the village this time. The third Hokage pointed out, that is to seize the opportunity to obtain a younger and stronger perfect container during the turmoil in Konoha, and now the only one in the village who can meet your various requirements is that child. Who could it be? The white robe half sitting on the ground asked. Uchiha Sasuke. The third Hokage said word by word. Yes, just as you said, it's Sasuke. Orochimaru smiled and nodded, but he still felt a little regretful about Sasuke. I originally planned to wait until Sasuke grew to perfection and then gradually took him away. Unfortunately, the plan could not keep up with the changes. When I was in the forest of death, I was hindered by that wooden fly. Wooden fly? Hearing Orochimaru say this, the third Hokage muttered and then realized who he was talking about. Tomorrow? Anyway, the things that come later have nothing to do with the teacher, because today, Orochimaru reapplied the painted skin on his face and turned back into the familiar face of the third Hokage. Teacher, you will die here. He stretched out his long tongue to lick the edge of his lips, and I will get everything I have always dreamed of after you die. This monster. The white robe and several other members of the ANBU said helplessly. Hey. A lot of thick tree roots suddenly emerged from the ground, and the target was obviously aimed at the people on the side of the third Hokage. The first Hokage took advantage of the conversation between the master and disciple and suddenly launched a would-release ninjutsu attack directly towards the third Hokage and his group. Chapter 139 Home. Two seriously injured black-robed ANBU members saw a series of thick tree roots and branches suddenly rising from the ground, rushing straight towards the third Hokage, who was still in the state of clasping his hands. Without thinking, they gritted their teeth and stood up, rushed over and shouted, Hokage-sama. Bang. Puff. The two of them directly knocked the third Hokage away, but they were pierced through the body by the sharp branches that rushed over quickly, hanging high in the air. The third Hokage looked up at this scene, opened his mouth, and didn't say anything. Swish, swish. Several thick tree branches emerged from the ground and rushed straight towards him and the injured white-robed ANBU. Ta. Swoosh. The tree branches were just a few steps away from the third Hokage and were blocked in time by the four-sided cage formed by the combination of the Vajra Ruai stick. After barely blocking the wood release of the first Hokage, the third Hokage put his hands on his knees and gasped for breath. At his feet was the only remaining seriously injured white-robed ANBU ninja. Don't let your guard down at any time, teacher. You are always too naive. Orochimaru did not attack the third Hokage while he was busy resisting the wood release, but just stood there and watched him with interest. What happened to you since then? Saruma opened his eyes again and asked the third Hokage, not understanding what he was thinking. It's not like your old style at all. Sorry old buddy. The third Hokage apologized to Saruma, and after closing his eyes and taking a deep breath to readjust himself, he looked down at Orochimaru from above. His eyes, those eyes full of ambition and evil, I actually noticed it a long time ago. He has this kind of character. He whispered silently, as if talking to Saruma, or to himself. Although I noticed it, I pretended not to know, because he is a genius that is rare in decades and the turbulent times, so I have always hoped that he will be the one to inherit my beliefs and strength, but it was my naivety that caused the situation that day, and now I didn't have the heart to kill him and let Orochimaru go. The third Hokage suddenly straightened his back and shouted, now, I want to make up for my mistakes back then and bury you completely with my own hands. Haha. Orochimaru smiled faintly at his words with a very non-committal attitude. I'm going to do it, old man. The third Hokage put his hand on the Vajra Ruai staff, and at this moment he finally made up his mind to kill him. With a bang, the four-sided cage disappeared with white smoke rising. It's too late. Orochimaru directly advised him to give up the pointless struggle. Swish, swish. The two Hokages began to move again. The third Hokage ignored the threats of the two adults and made seals with his hands and shouted, "Shadow clone technique." He directly created clones on the left and right. "Why do you want to use the shadow clone now?" The white robe was puzzled. "It actually accelerated the dispersion of the little chakra left in your body." "Huh, it seems that you are really old and you are so anxious to shorten your life." Orochimaru laughed at him. Tsurumo, who only had one eye open, knew clearly what the third Hokage was going to do and said to him, "Could it be that you want to?" He recited word by word and solemnly made a seal. "Si, hey, wei, mao, zu, zi, yu, wu, si, pa." He clapped his hands together again. With this order of hand seals, is Sarutobi really going to use that ninjutsu? Tsurumo sighed. Soon, a hideous demon wearing a loose pale yukata appeared in the sky behind the third Hokage, holding a blood-red rosary and a dagger in his mouth, and there were wandering souls wandering around. "Is this the god of death that the fourth Hokage said that only the caster can see?" After the third Hokage made a seal, he lowered his hands and glanced at the demon floating behind him with lifeless eyes, empty, cold and deep. No matter what you want to do, it's too late." Orochimaru declared to the third Hokage coldly and arrogantly, "I'm the winner, and Konoha will collapse and be destroyed. Konoha is my home." The third Hokage flatly rejected his arrogance. "Hokage exists to maintain and protect this home. Prepare to act with the clone, and I'm the one who was entrusted and inherited the will of fire by the two predecessors, and I will never fall so easily." Bang. Ninjutsu, darkness walking technique. The vision of the third Hokage suddenly changed, and all the light was taken away from him, and the white-robed ANBU in an instant. He exclaimed, "This is the second generation Hokage's best illusion." "What? The second generation Hokage's illusion?" The white-robed man looked at the dark and empty surroundings, and quickly took out a kunai from his sleeve for defense. No wonder it suddenly became completely black. Bang. Ta. The third Hokage was hit repeatedly. In the pitch-black darkness, he was punched and kicked. He silently gritted his teeth and injured it, thinking, "If we don't hurry up, we will be in more and more danger in this darkness." Ding. Ding. The third Hokage barely used the layered armor on his right wrist to block the attacks. Heh, boring nonsense. Orochimaru despised his remarks. "You are just a fleeting existence in the history of Konoha." Bang. Although the third Hokage was careful enough to defend himself, he was still kicked and fell to the ground. Even if you leave a rock statue of yourself, it will gradually weather and rot in the near future. Orochimaru's voice echoed in the darkness. "Konoha is not just an organization to me. This village breeds many new ninjas every year." The third Hokage struggled to stand up again. "They will grow up and fight hard to protect the village and the people they cherish." Ding. Ta. "Even if there is no blood relationship between us." The third Hokage's face was constantly attacked and beaten, but his eyes became more and more piercing for me. "That is the most important. The most important. Family. In that case, then I will break your pillar and completely destroy this so-called family." The pair of golden pupils unique to Orochimaru appeared in the dark sky. "Even if you kill me, this pillar of the village will not be broken." The third Hokage dodged a fierce attack from behind. "Because I'm the man who inherited the will of fire from the first and second generations, the third Hokage of Konoha. No matter how much you want to destroy this village, the new Hokage who inherits my will once again become the new pillar and protect Konoha, this family." He made his own announcement to the darkness. "Orochimaru, I will use a secret ninjutsu that you have never seen before." "Really? A ninjutsu that even I don't know?" Orochimaru's laughter rang out in the darkness. "Teacher, then let me see it." Ta. "Get ready to take it, Orochimaru." The third Hokage shouted. Sealing technique, Shiki Fujin. Chapter 140 Broken Blade. Bang. Cap. The third Hokage, is the technique not ready yet? It seems that we must speed up the completion. The third Hokage said secretly. Orochimaru did not intend to let the third Hokage go to the rescue slowly. After completing the technique, he issued an order for the two Hokages to continue the attack. "What's wrong with you?" Orochimaru said regretfully. "Are you going to be tortured to death by the two previous Hokages?" Hurry up and show your ninjutsu. Is it not enough? The third Hokage looked at the death god's eyes and saw him stretching one hand straight up to the air, letting the rosary pass through his arm, and obscure runes spurted out from it, crawling all over his arm. The death god pierced the hand covered with runes through the nothingness soul on his chest and grabbed the back of the third Hokage. He was caught off guard and stumbled forward a step. What's wrong? Can't you even stand? Orochimaru asked him kindly. Cough. Ignoring the traitor, the third Hokage suddenly coughed up blood. Feeling the piercing pain in his back, he squinted at the evil spirit. It seems that the technique has finally been completed. Swish, swish. The two clones were sent away by the third Hokage to search. Next, just catch them. As soon as he left, another attack came at him. Just when he thought he could only continue to passively take the beating. Earth escape earth flow wall. The white-robed ANBU actually propped up his body and staggered in front of the third Hokage. He formed a defensive seal and raised a small earth wall from the ground. Bang. Boom. The wall was constantly attacked by the two Hokage's machines. What are you doing? The third Hokage shouted to the white-robed ANBU. Quickly retreat. Wow. Bang. The high-pressure fine water jet punched many small holes in the earth wall, and it was about to be destroyed. The earth wall can't be stopped. You leave quickly. The third Hokage urged his subordinates anxiously. Hokage-sama, Konoha village can do without me. Without looking back, the white-robed man said to the third Hokage, but it absolutely cannot do without you. Swish. As soon as the white-robed man finished speaking, his body was penetrated by the water column gushing out from the front, while the third Hokage barely dodged the attack by bending his waist. Boom. The third Hokage watched his subordinates slowly fall to the ground in front of him, but he could only grit his teeth and endure, forcing himself to hold back. Be calm. Now it's the last step. We can't let him sacrifice in vain. In the large circular pit, there were bursts of dust flying outward. I wonder how Zaioli is doing. Mingshin half crouched on a tree, holding the sword on his waist, and always keeping an eye on the situation in the pit. Whoosh. After a while, a light green figure suddenly jumped out of the pit. It was Zaioli, who had just used the lotus flower. He half crouched on the ground to rest and breathe, with sweat dripping down his forehead. He was extremely tired. TSK. Jirafang, who was standing far away from the tunnel, was very upset when he saw Zigwapi jump out without any hindrance. Sakan is really useless. Mingshin, on the other hand, immediately jumped over to join Zaioli after seeing him jump out. Just as he was about to speak to him, he was surprised to see, "Hey, Zaioli, your shoulder." Swish. Boom. Jirafang approached Mingshin and stopped him, interrupting him with a cruel smile. "You will collect Zigwapi's body later." After that, he attacked fiercely. Bang. Ta. Damn it. Mingshin was anxious about Zaioli's situation, but he was stuck by Jirafang and couldn't speak. Hit accuracy 120%. Maximum destructive power. Bang. Whoosh. A spiral arrow, wrapped in a strong pressure, quickly rotated and attracted wind, broke through the air and attacked, aiming directly at Mingshin. Fuck, you're doing this again. He was furious, but helpless. He could only kick Jirobo away, and then duck to a tree, pulling out his sword with his left hand to block. Whoosh. The sharp arrow seemed to have eyes. After Mingshin jumped onto the tree, it followed him, and quickly approached him. Clang. Crack. As Mingshin swung his sword and deflected the arrow's trajectory, the tip of the blade also shattered. Boom. The arrow's momentum was too strong, so Mingshin couldn't hold the handle tightly, and it flew out of his hand and fell from the tree. You are such a waste, so weak. Jirobo took the opportunity to jump up and punch Mingshin. TSK, this red-skinned pig. Mingshin didn't take Jirobo's punch head on, but turned and jumped away. Boom. Crack. The tree broke apart with a sound of being hit. Boyao was watching them closely from the other side of the tree. Seeing that Mingshin had no weapon in his hand, he immediately took out a flute from his arms and put it to his lips to play. The three big guys who had been standing still on the ground immediately started to move again after hearing the flute music. Fuck, is that so? Mingshin saw the three big guys in the distance running towards him quickly and felt quite depressed. Are you forcing me to fight three alone? Benquan. Jirafang ran to catch up and swung his palm to attack Mingshin in front of him. Bang. Hearing the sound, Mingshan quickly transformed a wooden shield with one hand and took his palm attack, sinking deeply. If you have the guts, fight me one-on-one. Mingshan yelled at them. Can you become more capable if you fight like this? Humph, it's useless to ask questions. Jirafang didn't intend to waste time talking to him and attacked with his moves. Bang, bang, bang. Several Otonin didn't care about his routine at all. Mingshan, seeing that the situation on his side was critical, Xiaoli was about to stand up and rush over to support him. Hey, do you still have the time to care about others? A very cold voice suddenly sounded in his ear at the right time to remind him. Who is this voice? Xiaoli was shocked and looked around, but he didn't find the other party. He asked vigilantly, where is he? Hey, this way. He looked over and found that he was actually on the back of his other shoulder. Are you looking for me? He asked Xiaoli with a smile on his face, his sharp fangs exposed from his lips. You. Xiaoli hurriedly tried to pull him out of his body, but he was caught by him. Swish. Sakan jumped out of the pit, brushed off the dust on himself, looked at the situation on Xiaoli's side, and shook his head and said teasingly, hey, brother, I really admire you. You actually got into someone else's body to play again. Don't say unnecessary nonsense. Yukon on Xiaoli's shoulder ordered him, go to Jirobo to help. Yes, I know. Sakan spread his hands, shrugged and said to him, don't play too much, brother. After that, he went to Mingshan, who was already surrounded by 3 people and was fighting hard. Damn it. Xiaoli was helpless to break free from Yukon and was controlled by him. Chapter 141 Yukon. Zigwapi, I advise you not to waste your energy. Yukon lowered his head and explained to him with a smile, you should know that the meridian system through which chakra flows is intricately intertwined with various internal organs. Xiaoli gritted his teeth and glared at Yukon. He continued to talk nonchalantly. The so-called meridian system, in addition to creating internal organs and tissues, is also complexly and diversely intertwined with the cells that make up the tissues, and even the main component of the cells, proteins, is also intertwined with the meridian system. In state 2, I can freely use chakra to decompose and resynthesize cells and proteins in my body. Yukon was very considerate to reveal his secret information to him. In simple terms, I can disperse my body and enter the opponent's body at will, and then I can come out intact. I didn't expect you to have this ability. After listening to it, Xiaoli's expression relaxed a little, and he closed his eyes and thought to himself, do I have to admit defeat this time? My cells can move freely in your body, and can also create the part that belongs only to you. In other words, we are now in a state of fusion and share a body. Yukon laughed. You said share? Xiaoli opened his eyes and looked at him. That's right. Yukon said this, no longer hiding his last resort. This is a cruel killing method that only I can do, slowly taking away all the cells in your body. I see. Xiaoli finally understood him and suddenly took a deep breath. In this case, he casually pulled out a kunai from his waist and stabbed himself without thinking. Poof. Blood splattered all over the ground. Cough. Both of them coughed up blood at the same time. Xiaoli gritted his teeth again and asked him, if this is the case, what are you going to do? Suicide? Yukon couldn't believe it. Are you crazy? Since I can't get rid of you now, I have to die together. Xiaoli said, while enduring the severe pain. What the hell are you thinking, you bastard? Yukon was shocked by his shocking behavior. Ahem. It's just as I expected. Xiaoli said to Yukon resolutely. Anyway, you and I are sharing this body now. Asshole. Yukon was secretly terrified. As long as you enter the other person's body, you will not be attacked again. This was originally the biggest advantage of my ninjutsu, but no one has ever dared to do it like him. It's painful. The sweat on Xiaoli's forehead accidentally seeped into his single eye, forcing him to temporarily close one eye. I'll let you get rid of it together. After saying that, he pointed the kunai at himself again, this time at his heart. Stop. Yukon was no longer calm. Asshole, stop it. Sorry, it's too late. Xiaoli shouted angrily and stabbed himself resolutely. Fucking crazy. When Yukon's kunai was about to stab in, his soul flew out of his body and he lay on his back on the ground. Puff. When Xiaoli felt that he was detached, although he couldn't stop, He forcibly changed the trajectory of the kunai in his hand and stabbed it into his arm that was a few inches away from his heart. Yukon sat up with difficulty, looking at the wound in his abdomen with pain. Not enough blood. Xioli also turned around to look at Yukon. Just as he pulled out the kunai, the two collapsed on the ground gasping for breath. A black shadow was rushing towards the two of them. It was Mingshan, who had been beaten by several people in turn for a long time. He was also cut by arrows in several places. Blood was flowing down, and there were 2 or 3 sticky gold kunai stuck deep in his back. Do you want to run away now? Jirafang chased him closely behind, mocking him wantonly. You just need to kneel down and beg us to let you go. Before he finished mocking, ding, ding, Mingshan pulled the kunai on his back and threw it at Jirafang with a flick of his hand, making him busy blocking and blocking the rest of the words. It seems that his answer is a refusal. Sakan said beside Jirafang. That's a pity. Jirafang grinned and accelerated the pursuit. And Taoya, who was squatting not far from them, also used the flute music to control the 3 big guys to follow behind Jirobo. 100% accuracy, the most destructive power. Go to hell. Whoosh, swoosh. The sharp arrow rushed past at high speed, directly avoiding Jirobo and Sakan, who were chasing, and rushed towards Mingshan. Swish, swish. The special sharp arrow made of sticky gold, with a long silk thread, caught up with the target in just a few breaths. Mingshan turned around after hearing the sound of breaking wind. Seeing that he was about to be pierced by the sharp arrow and died, he took the initiative to reach out his hand first. Snap. In an unbelievable way, he caught the arrow. This guy. Tei also looked at him in surprise. Blood splashed out in an instant, scattered in the dust, and the flesh in his palm was bloody. A piercing pain was immediately transmitted to his mind, which made him grit his teeth and endure it, and he didn't scream out. Earth escape, hardening technique. Jirobo took advantage of the moment when he grabbed the sticky golden arrow and closed the distance. He hardened his arms to the point that they were stronger than rocks and swung them at Mingshan. Bang! Jirobo's fist hit Mingshan's other hand hard on the tree vine that had grown out in time. Bang! Crack! With a loud noise, he broke and destroyed Mingshan's temporary vines one by one. Bang! Bang! While Jirobo was busy attacking the vines, Mingshan kicked away Sakan, who was trying to sneak attack from the side. Then, he immediately cut off the chakra supply in his hand, threw it away, and turned over and jumped away. Just after landing, Mingshan saw the growing black shadow on the ground without raising his head, and hurriedly jumped away again. Boom. A deep pit was made on the ground by the thick bone claws. Mingshan took a breath, and continued to run, putting distance between them. Another big iron rod also missed, because Mingshan jumped away. When he swung it down, he almost lost control, and hit Jirobo and Sakan, making them very angry. They turned around and scolded. What are you doing, Taoya? Can't you two be more careful to dodge it? Teo retorted. Damn it, the arrow still didn't hit the kid completely. Kidomaru, who was hiding in a tree somewhere, ignored the quarrels and curses between the few of them, but just muttered to himself in annoyance. This kid is really difficult to deal with. He put away the sticky gold bow and bit off the silk thread in his mouth. I thought it was just a boring game to kill time by hunting this seaweed head. I didn't expect that he could dodge so many times. Crack. Snap. Ah. Kidomaru suddenly let out a ghost roar that was not like a human, and the intense pain even covered Taoya's flute music. What's going on? Jirobo and Sakan had originally planned to catch the sharp arrow tomorrow and attack him ruthlessly while his hands were injured, but they were attracted by Kidomaru's scream and looked to the side together. Chapter 142. One arrow to the throat. What? They were shocked to see that Kidomaru's two hands, which were originally holding the sticky gold bow, were cut off by another Mingshan with a broken blade katana that he had picked up at some point. It was extremely cruel. TSK, what are you screaming about? Mingshan scolded Kidomaru very dissatisfiedly. I just cut off your two hands. Don't scream like your father died. It's so noisy. When did you get behind me silently? Kidomaru stopped screaming in pain and stared at Mingshan with resentment. The sticky gold bow fell to the side. although his other two hands quickly covered the wound on his broken arm that was constantly bleeding. His face turned pale very quickly and looked extremely ugly, and some of the originally hideous and terrifying curse seal state gradually faded away. Are you surprised? Are you surprised? In Kidomaru's eyes, Mingshin's face was smiling very ugly at this time, and he was shaking his two broken arms in his hands. I will reveal the answer after I send you to the west, beast. Kidomaru took a few steps back. This was no longer as simple as playing a game. When did this kid? Sakan's face was solemn. When he was mumbling to himself, he heard Jirobo suddenly shouting, "Not good. What's wrong with you?" Sakan hurriedly turned around, but unfortunately he saw a very annoying scene. Mingshin was carrying a sticky gold arrow with his hands hanging down, rushing towards Yukon. He couldn't help but shout at his back in shock and anger. "Asshole, what are you doing? Hey, I didn't mean to do anything." Mingshin turned around after hearing the voice and said to Sakan with a fake smile, "Just killing someone." The blood on his arm flowed along the round golden rod to the arrow and ripped onto the ground, pieces of red, which was very eye-catching. Ha ha. Kidomaru dodged left and right, gritting his teeth and holding on in the severe pain of his broken arm, thinking to himself, "Not good. The blood is flowing too fast. We must find a place to bandage the wound first." Bang, bang. Before Kidomaru could think of a countermeasure, Mingshin had already kicked him off the tree and fell to the ground. Cough. After falling heavily, he kept coughing up blood from his mouth. "I'm going to rescue that loser Kidomaru. You go to Yukon," Jirobo said to Sakan in a bossy manner, and without waiting for him to say anything, he rushed over in one step. Whoosh, whoosh. Jirobo ran towards Kidomaru, who was kicked to the ground at a very fast speed, and without pausing, he formed a seal with his hands and shouted, "Earth style, rock pillar prison." La. Jirobo cast a spell to quickly create a hard earth pillar around the injured Kidomaru, wrapping him inside. Ta. Bang bang. Mingshin, who jumped down only half a step late, was firmly blocked outside the earth pillar cast by Jirobo, unable to get close to Kidomaru. "Die." Jirobo shouted, suddenly bent his legs slightly, and kicked to speed up, using the curse seal of state 2 to greatly increase and strengthen his own chakra, flashed in front of the earth pillar, and then jumped up. Without giving him a chance to defend, he hit Mingshin's body with the palm. Crack, crack. As a big hole was broken in his chest, his whole body gradually faded into wood, and the cracks spread. Bang. Finally, under Jirobo's attack, everything shattered, and at this time, the sound ninja suddenly discovered that he only used a wooden clone to quietly cut off Kidomaru's bow arms. Damn it. Jirobo was furious and turned his head to watch. He must die. His already red skin became even hotter and hotter because of this murderous intent. "Jirobo, don't be impulsive." Kidomaru sat up with great difficulty and pain, and kindly advised him, "This kid's methods are too vicious. Even with 3 or 4 of us besieging him, he still managed to cut off my hand. If you go alone." "Shut up, don't compare me with you." Jirobo roared and interrupted what Kidomaru was about to say, and said arrogantly, "You usually like to chatter endlessly in front of us. I have been tolerating you for a long time. Waste. TSK, this damn fat pig, you dare to become so arrogant after being in the state of curse and transformation." Kidomaru's face was livid, and he didn't say a word, but secretly held a grudge. "You always only know how to eat waste. After this operation is over, I must find a chance to kill you." Bang. The earth pillar began to shrink back. After Jirobo lifted the earth escape ninjutsu around Kidomaru, he ran straight back, vowing to kill Mingshin. On the other side, Yukon watched Mingshin approaching him and quickly stood up to respond, his face becoming more gloomy. "What a joke." Mingshin. Xiaoli looked up and tried to cover his wound with his hand. He was not as strong as Yukon and could not stand up immediately. His green clothes were stained red with blood. Mingshin looked up and saw him lying on the ground. He thought, Xiaoli is seriously injured. He clenched the sticky gold arrow in his hand. "I'll try to make a quick decision." Swish. Just as Mingshin was thinking about countermeasures, Sakan had already caught up with him and punched him in the back. Ta. Ta. Mingshin looked at it while running. Whoosh. The attack did not hit as Sakan expected, but missed. When he saw him again, He was already running far ahead. Damn, why did he suddenly become so fast? There are still more than 10 steps away. As long as I take the opportunity to attach myself to him, when he gets close, I can kill him easily. Yukon made up his mind and waited for him to come. Tomorrow, you have to cough. Xiaoli wanted to remind his teammates loudly to beware of Yukon's ability, but unfortunately, he was blocked by coughing blood when he reached his lips, and he couldn't say it. HMPH, you'd better save your energy. Yukon glanced coldly and said, far less enthusiastic about him than before. Tomorrow put the sticky golden arrow on his shoulder. Jirobo was confused while chasing him frantically from behind. He carries the golden arrow on his shoulder. What is he doing? Yukon saw the seaweed head carrying the golden arrow on his shoulder and mocked loudly. Do you think you can easily kill me with a broken arrow? Yukon said so and carefully estimated the distance between the two. The golden arrow was too short. Even if he stood close to him and swung the arrow to attack, he couldn't hit him at all. And there was the seriously injured watermelon rind behind him, who could be used to threaten the seaweed head when necessary. No, Yukon is standing too far away, and the attack range of tomorrow's golden arrow is too short. Xiaoli also saw the clues and secretly complained for tomorrow. Heh. Mingshan just smiled incomprehensibly when he heard Yukon's words. Whoosh. Just as a gust of wind blew by, Mingshan made his move. He swung the arrow towards Yukon with all his strength. Poof. Yukon's throat cartilage was actually cut open. This. Xiaoli, like Yukon, didn't even see the arc trajectory of the sticky golden arrow. He was shocked. So fast. Covering his Adam's apple with his hand, Yukon opened and closed his upper and lower lips. No, it's impossible. He looked at his shocking bloodstains on the sticky golden arrow, drifting with the wind, and falling to the ground. Recently, I asked my sister to help design the character image of the protagonist, which will be uploaded to Kidian Reading in a few days. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143, The Round Battle. Boom. Snap. Mingshan turned around and raised his hand to block Sakon's kick. Then he jumped in front of Xiaoli and kicked Yukon hard towards Sakon. With a thud, the two brothers collided head-on. Brother. Sakon looked at Yukon's near-death state and said in shock, go into the body and rest. Okay. Yukon didn't dare to say any more nonsense and slowly merged with Sakon. Mingshan, why were you able to hurt him? Xiaoli asked this question behind him. Although the length of the bow and arrow will not change due to speed. Mingshan took out a small bottle from his arms, poured out 2 pills and swallowed them. But when I was about to strike, I changed the way I held the sticky golden arrow. When I swung the arrow to attack, I only held the arrow feather tightly, and the distance naturally increased to a level beyond Yukon's expectation. When he didn't react to defend and block, I easily swept across and cut his throat. After saying this, Mingshan reached into his waist bag and took out another small bottle of medicine that was slightly yellowish and handed it to Xiaoli. What is this? Xiaoli looked at him in confusion. After taking this pill, it has a good hemostatic effect. Mingshan turned his head and glanced at Xiaoli. It will help your injury. Thank you. Xiaoli simply expressed his gratitude. After taking it, he directly opened the bottle cap and swallowed a pill of this medicine. Sakon waited for Yukon to fall asleep completely in his body before jumping forward to settle accounts with Mingshan, but he didn't expect it would release multiple wood clone technique. Mingshan frowned impatiently when he saw Sakon was about to run over to his side. He didn't have the leisure to continue to tangle with the conjoined orphan. He quickly formed seals with his hands and created 3 or 4 wood clones to lure him to the other side to deal with him slowly. After fighting continuously, Mingshan was able to use his clone to fight the enemy. Xiaoli stood up and looked at him, covering his wound. I was exhausted after just using the lotus flower. Sigh. I underestimated the difference in strength between Mingshan and me. His chakra is amazing. You scum, you are still in the mood to stand there in a daze. Just as the knife wound on Xiaoli's waist was gradually disappearing with smoke, Jirafang ran to them angrily. "Look how I beat you all up." He quickly exerted force with his feet and jumped in front of them. "Xiaoli, you step back and heal first." Mingshan saw that he was coming fiercely, and after saying this to Xiaoli, he kicked his heels and rushed up again to fight with Jirafang. "Humph, seaweed head, I'm going to beat you up this time." Jirafang shouted arrogantly. Bang, bang, bang. Ta. "If you can do it, you can try it." Mingshan did not say politely to him. Bang, bang, bang. The wound on Mingshan's palm had just coagulated when it was torn open again. Blood flowed out of his fist, but he didn't stop fighting with Jirobo. So strong. Xiaoli stood on the periphery and watched Mingshan fighting Jirobo alone. He was very dejected and in a very low mood. I didn't expect that I was not only not helpful here, but also a burden to him. Drag? Mingshan heard him say this by accident and was very speechless. "Hey, what do you base your judgment on, that you are useless Xiaoli?" he asked loudly. "Mingshan?" Xiaoli looked up when he heard it. "You have time to feel frustrated about your lack of strength over there." Bang. Mingshan accidentally got hit hard in the face by Jirobo, and his nose was broken by him. Blood dripped from his face, but he continued to say without being affected at all, "Why not try to move forward?" His words were like a revelation, pulling Xiaoli back from the frustration and confusion after fighting with the sound ninja. "Teacher K, I'm sorry, I'm such a failure. My practice is still not enough. I actually lost my fighting spirit because I was defeated by a powerful enemy." Xiaoli endured the pain in his waist and swore loudly, "After I defeat the enemy, I will go to the back mountain to run 500 laps back and forth as a punishment." Hey. Hearing his encouraging words, Mingshan raised his eyebrows, and there was an illusion in his heart. Did what I said just now hurt him? However, he just thought about it and continued to fight with Jirafang. Damn it. Jirafang, who was fighting with him, became more and more annoyed. "This kid is obviously not as strong as me. He has been hit by so many heavy punches. Why didn't he fall down and still has this momentum to continue to fight with me and fight head on? What's wrong?" Mingshan jumped back a little distance, spit out blood and sputum, and teased, "I haven't been beaten by you yet. Rock strike." Jirafang ignored his nonsense and chased him with a punch. The two of them fought again. Taewaya, who was watching the whole process from a distance, was very frightened. No one has ever survived after listening to the music I played, let alone fought back. She felt that Mingshan's successive shocking actions overturned her traditional cognition. Damn it, this bastard doesn't have the curse seal like us. Why can he fight us for so long? Taewaya gritted her teeth. Compared to him, aren't we useless? She bit her thumb and said anxiously, and the state too took too long. We can't waste it like this. We have to kill him as soon as possible. After making up her mind, she played the flute music, finale 9th section, and controlled and drove 3 big guys to help Jirafang besiege Mingshan. Among them, the big guy without hands and half of his body wrapped in bandages rushed straight towards him. Whoosh, whoosh, a sharp sound of breaking through the air came. Mingshan dodged when the big guy was about to get close to him, but then the 2 big guys holding the iron rod and bone claws followed him and attacked him with their weapons, but they didn't even scratch Jirobo. Mingshan saw it with the corner of his eye and cursed, "I almost forgot about these 3 lucky treasures." He barely managed to dodge Jirobo's heavy punch to his chin, but his face was still slightly scratched by his exposed claws and bleeding. TSK, although the pressure is much relieved, now that there is no annoying spider to attack me as an ADC output from a distance, I must find a way to deal with Taewaya's harassment attack again. Mingshan thought to himself, after exchanging a punch with Jirobo and pulling away. Bang. After Sakan blew up the last wooden clone created by Mingshan, he immediately ran towards Jirobo to join the new round of encirclement and suppression against him. They said that, when they activate the second state of the curse seal, their chakra and combat power can soar more than 10 times. Mingshan thought while running, from the time the runes on their faces just now to the current state, it has been more than 10 minutes. Their state must have a time limit, and it is impossible for it to be continuously supplied and used. Mingshan thought about this, and carefully observed the Otanin present. Sure enough, he saw some clues. Chapter 144 Weakness Breakthrough. Mingshin used the wood release to take advantage of the rock attack that Jirobo had thrown at him and bounced onto a tree to confront the two men. "Hey," I said, "why don't you cancel it?" Mingshin asked them, blood dripping onto the tree, as if he didn't notice. "Canceling what?" Sakan asked him sarcastically. "I really don't understand. What are you talking about?" "Hey, Sakan, why are you pretending? Do you think I'm blind? Can't you see Kidomaru gasping for air there, whose hands I cut off?" Mingshin pointed with a sneer. "Kidomaru?" When Zaioli heard Mingshin say this, he subconsciously looked over there. As soon as he saw it, he was surprised to find that Kidomaru was actually sitting there motionless, gasping for breath. He was confused for a moment. What's going on? TSK, this guy found out. Jirobo and Sakan looked at each other, feeling very bad. This kid knows the weakness after the curse is lifted. We are in trouble. Maintaining their so-called curse for a long time, releasing the second state, how can there be no risk? Mingshin picked his nose, quite disdainful. There will never be pie falling from the sky to hit people for no reason. How can there be no cost at all with more than 10 times the explosive power? Arsehole. After the truth was exposed in front of him, Jirobo was a little angry. "Shut up." Hiss. Kidomaru covered his bleeding arm in pain and looked up at Mingshin, who was talking in the tree with great resentment. "You bastard." He was now unable to move his whole body, and his physical strength was too exhausted. In order to avoid being attacked, he could only curse Mingshin in his heart, but there was nothing he could do. Once they stop using the curse seal, I'm afraid their combat effectiveness will immediately drop to a level of only 5. Mingshin analyzed and pointed out to Zaioli in an orderly manner. "Now we just need to keep fighting with them until they can't stand it anymore and remove the curse seal state by themselves. Then it will be much easier to fight." Ding, ding, ding. After blocking a series of shuriken attacks thrown by Zeduojin, Mingshin told Zaioli, "You wait and see. When the time is right, tie up that broken-armed rubbish and keep him under guard. We will hand him over to Konoha after the war is over." "What a joke." Jirobo interrupted him with a roar. "Die." He kicked back with both feet and rushed straight to attack Mingshin's tree. TSK, this red-skinned pig. Mingshin descended from the tree trunk to fight. "I want to see how long you can hold on." The three big guys controlled by Sakan and Tailwire also followed closely behind Jirobo and attacked him together. Morning. Because of his injury, Zaioli could only watch the battle silently on the side for the time being. He planned to catch Kidomaru, who had little fighting power, as he said, after he recovered a little. Hiss, hiss. The three-headed snake that had successfully entered the densely populated streets of the village was swinging around and sweeping, destroying the residential buildings in the village. Boom, crack. Buildings collapsed one after another, and dust flew up. The Konoha security forces were fighting fiercely with the Atosaga coalition on every main street. "We must find a way to stop this giant snake," Marino Ibiki, who was directing and dispatching at the scene, said to several subordinates with an extremely solemn face. "We can't let it move forward even a little bit. Behind it is Konoha school and hospital. Haven't the reinforcement arrived yet?" A Konoha ninja on the front line who had just said this to Ibiki was instantly knocked away by the three-headed snake's tail and screamed miserably. "No." Marino Ibiki stared at the snake helplessly, thinking to himself, the troops can't resist it. Ninjutsu, summoning technique. A huge green toad with two ninja swords on its back appeared from the head of the snake out of thin air. It sat on the back of the snake's neck and crushed it until it vomited blood. The roof collapsed. Boom. The dust stirred up by the fall of the snake blocked Marino Ibiki's sight. This is. After the dust settled a little, he looked up at the top of the giant toad. "Long time no see, Ibiki." The man standing on the toad at this moment was Jiraiya, who had arrived late. "Really, where you grew up, is your size the only thing you've grown?" he said, shaking his head. "It's really unbearable." "Jiraiya-sama." Marino Ibiki called out his name unexpectedly. He never expected that he would meet this Sama back at the critical moment when the village was in deep crisis. Jiraiya, a subordinate behind him, hearing this name, immediately looked up at the top of the toad with a startle. "It's the village legend, the one of the three ninjas?" He wanted to see his face. "Little bastards, open your eyes and watch." Snap. The crisp sound of wooden clogs stomping sounded, and Jiraiya made a bold move that he thought was charming, shook his head and said, "Thank me, Aizen ninja. Stop making so much noise, why don't you get to work?" Suddenly, a very familiar voice came out. You. Jiraiya was stunned and suddenly stood there, as if struck by lightning. He turned his head and saw a very annoying seaweed-headed guy struggling to walk towards him. "Hey, didn't you tell me to let me deal with the snake, and you kid went to the venue?" Jiraiya was also very annoyed. "I'm talking to you. Yell softly, don't make a fuss." Mingshin glanced at this guy nonchalantly, yawned and said, "I'm a shadow clone. Why are you so excited? Why, you don't trust me, and you come to monitor me?" Jiraiya originally made a very handsome appearance, but he felt bad when this kid broke the rhythm. "What are you thinking?" Mingshin was speechless, his eyes full of deep contempt. "I was going to find Hotaru and Kimimaro, but I didn't expect that. Because the streets and houses collapsed, I took many turns, and ended up here by mistake. TSK. Jiraiya looked at him expressionlessly, and the meaning was also very clear. "Who are you kid trying to fool? No one would believe it." The subordinate of Marino Ibiki saw the boy standing next to Jiraiya, and was very puzzled. "Who is that person? Why does he seem to be very familiar with Jiraiya?" Ibiki's cheek twitched, and it was obvious that he also remembered who this boy was. "Well, don't worry about that boy for now, you guys go to other streets to reinforce." He found a random excuse and sent them away. "Okay." Several subordinates behind him nodded and dispersed, each doing their own thing. "I don't know what the situation is over there." Mingshin glanced at the direction of the venue. "Hey, you can find out if you disappear back to your original body." Jiraiya tempted him. "Thank you, don't give me that." Mingshin walked to the front of Jiraiya listlessly, Kimimaro and the others. Bang! Just as he was about to speak, he was hit silently by a hidden weapon that came out of nowhere and disappeared on the spot in a puff of white smoke. TSK. Failed. The two sand ninjas hiding in the dark said angrily. That guy turned out to be just a clone. He wanted to take advantage of their conversation to sneak attack the white-haired ninja. Damn it. "Hey, it's time to move." His companion elbowed him and urged, "If we are discovered by the people of Konoha, it will be bad." "Okay, let's go." Chapter 145. Demonic Seal. Jiraiya watched his clone suddenly disappear and subconsciously grabbed the hidden weapon that attacked him. To his surprise, he said, "This kid." Whoosh! Someone jumped onto the toad. Jiraiya did not turn back to see who was coming, but asked directly, "What's the situation in other places?" "They are being blocked at the edge of the inner line." Marino Ibiki half knelt to answer, "But it is not clear what the specific situation of the Hokage-sama in the examination hall is." "Is that so?" Jiraiya slightly restrained the playful spirit he had before and tomorrow, and looked at the enemies who were attacking Konoha in various places, and said in his heart, "Don't die, old man. Gamma Hero, it's our turn to take action." Jiraiya shouted to the toad with a knife under his feet. The toad jumped up very tacitly and did not need Jiraiya to explain how to act one by one. It drew out its two swords on its own and prepared to show its skills against the other two snakes. The offensive and defensive battle outside had a great impact on the safe passage for the transfer of personnel. The whole process was in a state of constant turbulence. "Everyone line up." Iruka tried to calm the students' panic and their worries about their families. In the continuous shaking above the passage, gravel and dust kept falling, which scared Yuden and Moji who were following the marching team and screamed. The two held Konohamaru's arms tightly and did not let go. "Everyone calm down, don't be afraid." Iruka shouted to encourage and calm the students in this shaking. Konohamaru, this place won't collapse, right?" The two friends looked up at the top of the passage and asked Konohamaru worriedly. "No, it's okay." Konohamaru also looked up. "This stone statue passage, although it is very old, is very solid and strong. Grandpa told me this before." As he said, he remembered his grandfather's kind voice and smile, and said with a little peace of mind and determination, "So, there will be absolutely no problem." Swish, swish. Two Otanin ninjas with strange looks carefully hid in the ruins of a building somewhere and used the summoning technique. to summon small animals to scout the surrounding streets. About a cup of tea time later, a small bird with a pure black body and a look similar to that of a starling flew back to one of the men's shoulders, chirped in his ear for a few times, and then with a bang, it turned into puffs of white smoke and disappeared without a trace. Hanglian failed, was seriously injured, and fled with the remaining 2 surviving subordinates. The man told his companions the information the bird had scouted back. "What about Kimimaro?" his companion asked him. After the enemy retreated, he vomited blood and fainted, and fell to the ground. He said briefly, "Very good." The companion nodded, and after a moment's silence, he discussed with her, "Terry, you go ahead and report this situation to Danzo-sama. Aren't you going to come back with me to report? I'll go to the Chunin examination hall again, and continue my undercover reconnaissance." "Okay." In a ruined building on a street filled with smoke, Hotaru cried and held Kimimaro's arm tightly. "Hotaru, it's okay." Shizune kept comforting her. "Yes, Lady Tsunade is here, and Kimimaro is here." As she spoke, she couldn't say the rest of the words. The girl burst into tears and leaned her head on Kimimaro, who was in a deep coma. "Well, you should take good care of Lady Tsunade," Kosuke, who was standing aside, said to Shizune silently. Shizune was helpless. She looked at Tsunade, who had been curled up in the corner and trembling, and said to herself with pain, "Tsunade-sama. Sorry, monkey." The first Hokage suddenly regained his clarity when the shoulders were held by the third Hokage. "I'm sorry for causing you trouble." The second Hokage smiled and said as he was also held by him, "Please forgive me." The third Hokage bowed his head in pain. First Hokage. Their bodies gradually turned grey. Second Hokage. What is he doing? From Orochimaru's perspective, he did not see the third Hokage perform any unique ninjutsu, but just held the shoulders of the 2 Hokages. As soon as the third Hokage opened his eyes, he suddenly bent his waist and pulled hard, and the god of death took action, and pulled out a group of unknown blue humanoid objects from the bodies of the 2 Hokages. "Seal!" he shouted and pulled the blue shadow into his stomach. After doing all this, the third Hokage gasped for air. On his exposed old belly, a vortex of seal drawn with ink suddenly appeared. With 2 bangs, the clone disappeared. "This is it." The third Hokage was surprised to see that the bodies of the first and second Hokage turned completely grey and peeled off, revealing 2 dead bodies inside. They were the 2 Otogakure genin who participated in the preliminaries, Jinto and Sakuden. "You even." The third Hokage shed tears. "You even played with the lives of your subordinates." Disappointed and scolded him. "The lives of your subordinates?" Orochimaru retorted. "You always like to say such boring things. Don't they all trust you?" The third Hokage said angrily, "Come on, Tsurumo." He took the long-awaited Vajra Ruai stick, jumped up with the stick, and rushed towards Orochimaru to attack. Orochimaru raised his sword casually and fought with the third Hokage. Ding. Ding. The third Hokage dodged and seized the moment when Orochimaru showed a flaw. He knocked the Kusanagi sword away with a stick and jumped behind him. "Take it." The Vajra Ruai stick stretched out to attack. Tsurumo showed one hand outside and was about to grab him. Hidden shadow snake hand. Orochimaru threw several pythons from his arms to deal with Tsurumo's hand. "Damn it, you bastard." This made him very angry. Snap. While he was busy dealing with Tsurumo, the third Hokage threw down the Vajra Ruai stick and pressed his hands on his collarbone. "You're done, Orochimaru." The Grim Reaper stretched out the hand with the blood-red rosary again, passed through the third Hokage's body, and drilled into Orochimaru's abdomen. What is this feeling? Although he couldn't see it, Orochimaru could feel that something in his body was being forcibly pulled out and emptied. Oops. He hurriedly controlled the Kusanagi sword that had fallen to the ground and floated up to aim at the back of the third Hokage. Bang! Tsurumo also changed from the Vajra Ruai stick state back to its original form. "Go to hell." The 2 shouted almost at the same time. Tsurumo was entangled by the python and dragged on the ground for a few steps, trying to help the third Hokage block the sword. Puff! Blood splattered. Although Tsurumo barely grabbed the sharp blade of the Kusanagi sword with one hand, unfortunately, he was still a step too late and the sword still pierced the third Hokage's body. Cough. He kept coughing up blood. "Why didn't you dodge?" Orochimaru questioned him. "Damn it." Tsurumo watched the hand of the god of death slowly pull out of Orochimaru's body. Shikifujin. This sealing technique requires you to give your soul to the god of death as the price of the technique. This is a ninjutsu that requires your life. The third Hokage explained to him why he didn't dodge. Orochimaru tried to raise his hand to seal, but was shocked to find that he could no longer use the ninjutsu. I don't need to dodge, because I will die eventually. The third Hokage groaned. When the seal ends, my soul will be devoured by the god of death. This is the ninjutsu used by the hero who saved the village in the past. He grabbed Orochimaru more tightly. Soon, you will die from this ninjutsu. Could it be that the ninjutsu that sealed the Nine Tails was also this ninjutsu? Orochimaru finally knew why he couldn't see this technique. Wait a minute, I'm going to force your soul out of your body. The third Hokage panted and said to him, seal it. Why doesn't your body obey me? Orochimaru was extremely irritated and yelled at him. What did you do to me? You should be able to see it. The third Hokage reminded him, because half of your soul has been pulled out. Orochimaru gritted his teeth. People whose souls are sealed by this ninjutsu will never be able to become Buddhas and ascend to heaven, and can only stay in the belly of the god of death and suffer. The souls of the sealer and the sealed will be entangled forever, hate each other, and fight each other. After listening to the third Hokage's story, he really saw a hideous demon in a pale yukata behind him, holding a dagger in his mouth, staring at the two greedily. What is that? Orochimaru didn't recognize what it was for a while, and he was not sure. The Grim Reaper took the dagger out of his mouth, stretched out his long tongue full of saliva, and licked his fangs. Swish. He cut off the humanoid blue shadow in his hand with a knife, chewed and swallowed it, ignoring the ghostly blue shadow that was screaming. This is the Grim Reaper? Orochimaru's forehead was dripping with cold sweat. After eating the blue shadow, the Grim Reaper continued to look at the two people unsatisfied, which made him shout at the third Hokage in shock and anger. What a joke. I won't let you get what you want, old thing. He quickly put his two fingers together and continued to control the Kusanagi sword to penetrate forward. The third Hokage resisted the heart-wrenching pain. Die quickly. Under Orochimaru's curse, the two began to wrestle with each other. It has come to this. It has come to this. The third Hokage coughed and hated himself secretly. Don't I have enough strength to pull out this guy's soul? He felt extremely regretful. My aging body doesn't even have the strength to fight to the death. If you were 10 years younger, you could really kill me. Orochimaru thought to himself. His hand did not stop at all, and he drove the Kusanagi sword with his fingers to let it continue to move forward. The third Hokage felt pain and the hand of the god of death was forced to retract a little. Sarutobi, if we don't kill him now, the village will be finished. Sarutobi tried his best to control the momentum of the Kusanagi sword rushing forward. Do you understand? Of course I understand. The third Hokage growled and forcibly pulled it out again. Ugh. Orochimaru cursed him in great discomfort. You, old man. Chapter 146. Who is the villain? On the outskirts of the battle between Orochimaru and the third Hokage, there was another battlefield separated by layers of trees. TSK, how did I end up at Jiraiya's place? After receiving the information from the clone, Mingshin was quite depressed, but he didn't want to think about it anymore, because at this moment, he was exhausted from the confrontation with a Tangai ninja. Jirobo panted, and it only took a moment for his whole body to completely dissipate the second state of the curse seal. Without the blessing and amplification chakra, he finally looked at the other party with a trace of fear in his eyes. Mingshin pulled out the sticky gold kunai on his thigh with great force and threw it on the ground. He spat a mouthful of thick phlegm at Kidomaru, who was knocked unconscious by him. You bunch of trash, do you still want to kill me now? Mingshin wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and although he was hunched over, his eyes were staring at the three people very coldly. You. Teuaya covered the extremely shocking wound on her face that was cut by the broken knife. She hesitated for a long time, but she was as scared as Jirobo and couldn't utter a complete swear word to curse him. Damn it. Sakan, who was used to looking down on everyone and not taking anyone seriously, was no longer as arrogant as before. He asked him in doubt, who are you? Haha, haven't you always been arrogant? Mingshin straightened his back, poured out the last 2 pills of soldier's food in the bottle in his hand, and ate them up. Why don't you ask me to beg for mercy now? The three did not respond to his words, not because they couldn't say it, but because they were really scared. They had never encountered such a terrifying, cruel and powerful ninja. An ordinary genin can't have your strength. After Jirobo lost the second state, his tone was extremely gentle. The four of us have activated the second state of the curse seal, which means we can hunt four powerful chunins at the same time. It's no problem to defeat them. Stop bragging, you won't die. Mingshan was very impatient and sneered at them. You want to be so arrogant by relying on others to give you arms? Hearing you brag about how powerful you are, it makes me feel a little bit expectant and interested. He shook his head very disappointedly, looking at the three people with disdain. I didn't expect that compared with those I met before. He stepped hard on Kidomaru's broken arm, and the intense pain made his face twisted quickly, and he screamed, "You are nothing special, Mingshan." Mingshan looked back when he heard the sound and saw Xiaoli, who was sitting behind him to rest, struggling hard. Cough. At this time, he covered his bleeding shoulder with one hand and pressed the ground with the other hand to barely get up. Xiaoli, just sit there and take a rest. Mingshan persuaded him, don't force yourself. Mingshan, you can't step on him like that. Xiaoli took a breath and said to him, this is too insulting to the opponent. Insult? Mingshan was stunned. Did I hear it right? He shuddered in his heart. What is this idiot thinking? I admit that what they did was excessive. Xiaoli tried to persuade him, but we should. Should what? Mingshan stretched out his hand to stop him from saying, should we be polite and courteous to them after the fight? After that, he shook his head. Then you have to distinguish between the two, right? But, Teacher K often teaches us. Xiaoli wanted to continue without giving up. K did say that, but you have to treat enemies differently. They are arrogant, domineering and arrogant. Mingshan grinned cruelly, scraping the blood on his feet onto Kidomaru's face, not caring about his extremely resentful eyes. They are not qualified to be treated well. Asshole. Kidomaru lay on the ground and injured Mingshan's torture. I must kill you. If you don't have the strength, shut up, you rubbish. Mingshan's eyes flashed with cruelty, and he remembered the gust of wind that night. He kicked him over, raised his leg, and stepped hard again, causing Kidomaru to scream miserably on the wound on his other broken arm. Mingshan, that's enough. Xiaoli couldn't bear it any longer, gritted his teeth, and ran to Mingshan's side regardless of his own injuries, reaching out his hand to stop his violence. Click. One of his hands was on his shoulder. Xiaoli. Mingshan did not show any emotion, but said to him calmly, now is wartime. There is no such thing as mercy, fairness, and kindness to the enemy, do you know? He did not care about Xiaoli's sight, and did not relax at all. Instead, he increased his strength, and rubbed the flesh and blood around the wound on his arm. This made Kidomaru open his bloodshot eyes in pain, and he shouted without being able to bear it anymore, you bastard, kill me. Mingshan's cruel actions made Sakan, Tehuaya and the other two on the opposite side feel their scalps tingling and their hearts trembling. But, you are too cruel. Xiaoli pointed out sternly, I really cannot agree with your approach. Oh, you are too naive, Xiaoli. Mingshan was not angry that he accused himself like this. Put yourself in their shoes. If they succeed in destroying Konoha this time, what do you think they will do to us at that time? I'm afraid they will use more cruel and bloody means to deal with and poison everyone, don't you think? At the end, he actually asked the three sound ninjas opposite. You, don't be kidding. Jirobo shouted, retorting him angrily, we sound hidden. We won't use cruel means to deal with ordinary people in Konoha, right? Mingshan heard the fat pig say this, and instinctively laughed and sarcastically said, no, it's not a ghost, you are forced to say this, because you are not as strong as me now, but you didn't act cruelly before. After that, he restrained his disdain with a cold snort, took a step back, and kicked Kidomaru in front of the three people. Asshole, what are you doing? Tehuaya gritted his teeth, and looked at Kidomaru who rolled in front of him, and was half dead. Without the arrogance, when the seal was sealed, he dared to ask him with a little anger, damn it, don't be so insidious to sneak attack, fight us openly. Hey, stop yelling at me like a bastard. Mingshan was a little speechless, you curse at me, are there only a few words? He spread his hands. Also, why are you staring at me all the time? As if I'm the villain. Don't you think it's funny? Feeling that he had rested enough, Mingshan began to seal with his hands. Don't sneak attack. Fight you openly? He smiled and shifted his gaze. I vaguely remember what Kidomaru said before. You want to kill me like a game, right? Saken? You guy. Saken only said this sentence, and there was no follow-up. Don't you like to laugh? Mingshan encouraged him. Keep laughing. Snap. Seal done. Chapter 147. Eagle roaring in the sky. Would release. Was about to be launched. Whoosh, whoosh. Dozens of shuriken attacked Mingshan from different angles. TSK. Mingshan was about to launch a ninjutsu to kill the 4 sound ninjas directly, but was disrupted by this sudden attack. He had no choice but to temporarily change to wood release. Wood wall. A row of wooden pillars spontaneously bent from the ground to form an arch to protect him and Xiaoli. Ta, ta, ta. All the shurikens were nailed to the surface of the wooden wall. When Mingshan released the ninjutsu, they had all disappeared. Where are they? Xiaoli looked around in confusion. Not good. They are very likely to run to the Hokage. Mingshan and Xiaoli analyzed and speculated where they would go, and then quickly ran to the depths of the forest. The first generation Hokage had released the Tree World Advent once before, and then Mingshan increased the strength and launched it again, expanding the range of the rooftop trees several times to break the formation. Later, in order to catch the third generation Hokage, the first generation Hokage launched a small-scale wood release, resulting in a long distance now. When did the journey to the rooftop become so long? Xiaoli complained, after walking for a while. Maybe it was originally like this. Mingshan's eyebrows jumped, and he answered perfunctorily. Swish, whoosh. Kabuto and the sound ninjas were running through the forest. Hurry up and swallow this pill. Kabuto distributed 2 small red pills to each of them. Lord Orochimaru. Saken took the pills, and was about to ask Kabuto about his situation. I don't know either. There are only him, and the third Hokage in the forest now. Kabuto pushed the frame of his glasses. But why did I see you guys being beaten so badly when I got on the rooftop? Who did it? We. Jirobo supported Kidomaru and hesitated for a long time without being able to speak. The 4 of us were defeated by Ito Mingshan. Kidomaru's broken arm wound was treated with a secret technique and no longer bled, so he answered weakly on behalf of Jirobo. What? Kabuto was shocked. Is he the only one? Yes. Saken nodded bitterly. Didn't you activate the curse seal? Kabuto was puzzled, but he still said, the battle between ninjas can't last too long, let alone 4 pairs. We activated the curse seal and wanted to end the battle quickly, even using the second state. The one who answered was Teiwaya, but that guy is really. Although he didn't say anything else, the fear in his eyes was not concealed, which made Kabuto see it clearly. It seems that I misjudged the seal of that kid's hands before, and mistakenly thought that he was taking advantage of the opportunity to catch you all in one fell swoop. Kabuto looked very bad. I didn't expect that this annoying seaweed head mentioned by Lord Orochimaru has grown to such a high level that he can fight against 4 elite guards of a Togakure alone. This is not a good thing. Although his heart sank, the most urgent thing was to meet up with Orochimaru first, so he didn't think about it and continued to run. You are very persistent, Sarutobi-sensei. When Orochimaru was about to put his fingers together to control the Kusanagi sword, he found that he could not drive it. He could not help but curse him angrily. You old thing who is about to die. No matter how he controlled it, there was no response. Don't you understand, Orochimaru? He was stunned when he heard it and couldn't help but look at the third Hokage. Konoha is my home. The third Hokage said word by word, and I'm the pillar of this family. So didn't I say that I would overthrow you, the pillar? Orochimaru said dissatisfiedly. As long as the people in the village are still fighting desperately to protect their most important companions, as the pillar of Konoha, I will not let you do whatever you want. The third Hokage retorted. Who knows what will happen? Orochimaru did not believe him. Humph, don't underestimate the Hokage. The third Hokage gritted his teeth and pulled out a large section of him. Impossible. Orochimaru stared at his waist and raised his head to question. Where do you get the strength from? I think your chakra should be almost gone. The power of chakra is not only used to launch ninjutsu. The third Hokage laughed. TSK, is your hand still being held? Orochimaru was secretly anxious. I can't launch ninjutsu to get rid of him. It's almost time for you to let go. After he tried to improve his control, the Kusanagi sword finally responded a little, slowly moving forward, and the monkey demon tried his best to hold the sword tightly. I won't let you continue to succeed in your ambition to harm the village. The third Hokage gritted his teeth and insisted. Old man, you can't stop my ambition. Orochimaru persuaded him to give up. You are destined to die here. With your current dying state, will you still have the energy to save this village as the third Hokage? The third Hokage ignored the words of the traitor. Do you understand the current situation? Orochimaru confessed to the third Hokage without exaggeration. Now, in this village, including my subordinates, even the Sand Village ninjas have attacked. He looked into the third Hokage's cloudy old eyes. We will kill you, and the Konoha ninjas, as well as the women and children, without leaving a single one alive. The plan to destroy this village will succeed. Haha. The laughter echoed in the woods, and the two groups of people in it could hear it. Outside the examination room, the originally bustling streets were now full of devastation and smoke. There's no one inside. There's no one here either. Listening to his subordinates' reports, the Sand Ninja captain was puzzled. Strange. We have already entered the center of Konoha village, but we encountered too little resistance. The subordinates could not answer. And there wasn't even an old, weak, woman or child. The captain thought this was very unusual. What's going on? The Sand Ninjas suddenly heard an eagle cry in the blue sky and looked up. At the same time, in the examination room and other places, many Konoha ninjas who had just repelled the enemy's attack also looked up to hear the eagle cry. That's... Kay looked up. Is it finally here? Kakashi also looked and said. In front of the Konoha Memorial Monument. I will definitely avenge you. Ziyan sadly stroked the newly engraved name on the monument. Hey 8. After hearing the eagle cry from the sky, she put on her mask again. It's a signal. Let's go. She turned around and said to several ANBU teammates. Understood. Swish, swish. A group of people disappeared from the spot in an instant. This soundies. Orochimaru also heard the eagle cry, raised his eyelids through the layers of siege above his head, and looked at the blue sky outside the gap in the dense forest. You still don't understand Konoha, Orochimaru. The third Hokage said to him meaningfully, don't underestimate the ninjas of this village. Thanks to brothers Io, Yuwashing, for the recommendation vote you cast the day before yesterday. Chapter 148 Pig, Deer, and Butterfly. Kabuto and Menshin's teams competed in running speed, rushing to the place where the third Hokage and Orochimaru were, on the way to the confrontation. What is this? Xiaoli squatted on a tree and listened carefully. The eagle's cry? Menshin looked up at the sky, and after attracting his gaze, he said to Xiaoli, can your body hold on now? No problem. Thanks to your medicine, it works very well. Well, then let's hurry up and rush to the Hokage-sama. Okay. On a ruined high-rise building somewhere, three people stood side by side, watching the eagle fly by. Did you see it? Yes. It's the signal. Get ready for action. Yes. Swish, swish, swish. This is really troublesome. Guji panted and guarded the surroundings with a knife. They hid in the ruins, but were still discovered by the Sound Ninja and the Sand Ninja, and were surrounded. Tsunade-sama. Shizune held a kunai in her hand and shouted anxiously at her dazed look. Unfortunately, Tsunade was still the same, trembling and holding Tantan without any reaction. Hotaru gritted his teeth and stood in front of the unconscious Kimimaro, with tears still on his face, anxiously. Where are you tomorrow? Little girl, Shizune. Hotaru and Shizune turned their heads when they heard Gusuke calling them. I will rush to the enemy group alone and try to attract their firepower. You take the opportunity to take Kimimaro and Tsunade-sama and escape together. Gusuke told Hotaru and Shizune his plan. No. The girl shook her head and refused. Grandpa, we will not accept your idea. Hatsuna is right. Grandpa Gusuke, please don't say these anymore. We can't agree to it. Shizune's face was serious. No matter how critical the situation is, we will not abandon you and run away alone. You. Gusuke was furious, just when he was about to say something else to try to persuade the two. Kill them. The Yinsha coalition standing opposite them had already taken the lead. Seeing the enemy's encirclement, the murderosaurus surged up, and the few people had to stop the last dispute, just as they were preparing for the final fight. The technique of multiplication. A roar suddenly sounded in the air. Boom. A burly man made his whole body huge, towering in front of the enemy and us, looking down at everyone. Who is that? Aang looked up, and felt that he was very familiar, but she couldn't remember who it was for a while. Brother Dingzeduo. But Shizune next to him recognized the person at a glance and blurted out, "Hey." The girl was very surprised. "Sister Shizune, you and Lady Tsunade haven't been back to Konoha for a long time. How come?" "Brother Dingzeduo took care of me a lot when I was a child, so I recognized him at a glance." Shizune smiled at her with relief, letting her feel at ease. "Our reinforcements are finally here." Bang. Cap. Chozo waved his giant iron weapon, sweeping across the enemy blockade that surrounded Kimimaro and his men. All the bones of the Sound Ninja and Sand Ninja who were lightly touched by his weapon were shattered, and they screamed and flew into the air. "Who are you?" Guji noticed that a person suddenly appeared in front of him on the right, facing the siege of two teams alone, and he was not panicked at all. Just as they were about to attack, suddenly, with a thud, they felt as if their whole body was fixed by someone's spell, unable to move at all. Body. A Sand Ninja panicked and tried to get rid of the control. "Why can't I move suddenly?" "This is Konoha's secret ninjutsu, the shadow imitation technique." The visitor said leisurely. "You have seen it for the first time, right?" He raised one hand. "Then I will let you see it again." A shadow spread from the Sand Ninja's feet and stretched upward to the neck artery. "What is this?" The Sand Ninja looked at the black shadow that was climbing over in disbelief. "This is Konoha's secret ninjutsu, the shadow strangulation technique. Feel it." After saying that, he started to drive the black shadow to strangle the enemy to death. After clearing the enemy, Guji looked at the person walking towards him. "Shikaku, what's wrong with you?" "Mr. Guji, are you okay? We just happened to see you in a high-rise building and saw that you were in danger, so we immediately came to support you." Shikaku took out a box of ointment from his arms and gave it to him and said, "This is the secret medicine of the Nera family. You should quickly apply it on the wound to treat it." "Thank you." Guji took it. "It's just a small matter. Why thank you." At this time, on the other side, two ninjas from Yinsha and Yinsha were holding ninja swords. When they were not paying attention, they flashed behind Aang and were about to launch a sneak attack. Whoosh. Heart-shaking body technique. A Konoha ninja flashed in front of the girl and shouted, performing ninjutsu. He only made a special gesture, and the enemy who was rushing towards them inexplicably became confused. One of the Ottonen suddenly turned around, raised his sword, and slashed at the Sandman next to him. Clang. "Hey, what are you doing? Stop it." The Sandman quickly parried. This, my body is out of control. I acted on my own." The Ottonen looked at himself indiscriminately attacking friendly forces, unable to control his body, and the swords of both sides rang and fought. Are you Uncle Heiai?" Aang looked up at the pattern on his back and asked uncertainly. "Yes, it's me. Long time no see, Aang." The man turned his head to answer the girl. "Thank you, Uncle Heiai." Aang wiped the tears from her face and sincerely thanked him for saving her. "It's okay, Aang, you're too polite to say that." Heiai smiled at her and turned his face to continue to concentrate on preventing new enemies from appearing. Swish, swish. "It's been a long time since I've seen this." After sweeping away the enemies around Guji, Shikaku said to Heiai as he walked. "Yeah." Hei nodded and said, "This reminds me of the old times." Dang. Dingzeduo's heavy footsteps followed and stood beside the two. The pig, deer, and butterfly trio has gathered again. Shikaku looked around. "So, what should we do next?" Dingzeduo asked, looking down. "That's the trick we should use to deal with it." Shikaku made up his mind. "Are you talking about the pig, deer, and butterfly formation?" Heiai asked him. "Pig, deer, and butterfly?" Hotaru and Shizune looked at each other. Neither of them knew what they were talking about. Even Guji didn't quite know what kind of formation this was. "Oh, you still remember it, Shikaku?" Ding Zeduo smiled knowingly. How could I forget it? Shikaku stretched out his finger to touch his earring. If I forget it, this oath earring will cry. Heh. That's right. After Shikaku finished speaking, he turned his sight back and saw a new wave of enemies attacking again in the distance and shouted, "Let's go." Ding Zeduo, okay. Hey IE, okay. Chapter 149, Collapse. Boom, boom. Heiai and Shikaku, each standing on one shoulder, joined Chozo to meet the enemy. Chozo roared, sweeping up a strong wind, blowing it towards the invading enemy, causing it to be thrown into the air and screaming. "You still made a good shadow as always," Shikaku said, staring at the shadows of the other Ratosuga ninjas feet below. Whoosh, whoosh. In this gust of wind, Hotaru and Shizune each protected the people around them. Their eyes were blown so hard that they couldn't open them, and even Kosuke tightly grasped a large rock beside him to temporarily avoid it. 10, 20. Shikaku jumped down from Chozo's shoulder, looking down and silently counting the number of enemies on the ground. 33. Boom. After landing gently, Shadow Seam technique. Shikaku used his own shadow to restrain the movements of multiple enemies. If you were standing on Ding Zeduo's shoulder and watching, it would be enchanting. Black banner. What's wrong? I can't move my feet. Think of something. All the people in the Yinsha coalition, who were held by the black shadow, involuntarily walked towards Shikaku, the center point. Swish. Heiai appeared behind Shikaku. He said without turning his head, "The last blow is up to you." Heartbreaking martial arts technique. After Heiai launched the secret ninjutsu, he controlled a large number of enemies to kill each other. "Really, the only thing I don't want to fight with is you," Shikaku said, and suddenly remembered something. He quickly turned his head and controlled it. "Hey, I almost forgot." He raised his hand to drive the three people who were also controlled by the black shadow, Guji, and let them go to their side to join. "Are you okay, Aing, Shizune, and Mr. Guji?" "Yeah." The three nodded in response. Dang, dang. Ding Zeduo strode over, half squatted and said, "Everything here is done. We should leave for the next area." Shikaku, "Hey." Swish, swish. The two jumped on his shoulders again. "Well, let's go." Watching the three figures leave, Guji murmured, "No wonder the Hokkaids specifically asked me to find them." Then, he took Shizune and Hotaru and hurried to the shelter to find the medical team to treat Kimimaro. Ninja training ground. The two teams of Sand Village ninjas passed by here and saw a man in a white shirt standing in the open space and looking at them. "Humph, dare to look at us so recklessly. You are tired of living. Go and get rid of him." The team leader turned his head and ordered two subordinates around him. "Understood." Whoosh, whoosh. One on the left and one on the right quickly flashed out from both sides of the captain, holding a kunai and running straight towards the man. Dang. Just when the two rushed to the other side, they were knocked to the ground by him with extremely fast skills, and they didn't even see the movements clearly. The other sand ninjas followed closely behind them and were about to attack, but they were all temporarily shocked by the beautiful defense of the man in white, and they surrounded him and attacked blindly. "What are you doing?" The captain said dissatisfiedly. "There is only one person on the other side." Just as he was about to command his subordinates to attack again, the other side took action first. The man was seen on the spot, releasing a large amount of blue chakra from the chakra points in his body, and then making a large circle rotation like a high-speed spinning top, rolling up all the sand ninjas, and throwing them into the air with screams. Boom, boom, boom. One by one, they fell to the ground, and fell into a coma. Swish, swish. Hayashi-sama. A large number of Konoha ninjas flashed from the surroundings and approached him. "Tie up all the invading enemies, and deal with them together with other prisoners after the battle," Hayashi said to his subordinates, after he lifted his Byakugan. "Yes, Master Hayashi." On the roof of a residential building, 2 people and 3 dogs were rushing to other battle points. Swish, swish. Suddenly, a team of sand ninja appeared and blocked in front of him. The man shouted angrily, "Kirimimaru, go." "Yes." A one-eyed dark grey dog responded, and then fought with the other side with his master. Swish, swish. At this moment, a group of Konoha Jonins were quickly passing through the forest of roofs created by Mingshan and the first Hokage. "I really didn't expect that, Mingshan." Hong said to Kakashi and Gay while jumping away from the tangled branches that suddenly emerged from the wall. This kid actually hid his strength so deeply. Well, everyone has one or two little secrets that they don't want others to know, Kakashi said without any concern. However, Ming Xian's performance in the exam venue this time really impressed me. Oh, this is youth. Gay smiled and clenched his fists, agreeing with Kakashi without knowing why. That kid. Hong Dao was quite depressed when she heard them discussing the seaweed-headed guy like this. He's obviously a guy who only knows how to muddle through his days, but now he can get praise from Kakashi and others. I'm speechless. At this moment in the woods, the ninjas of Konoha are now fighting to protect the village with their lives. The third Hokage reminded Orochimaru, the real power in the world is not just about mastering ninjutsu. I should have taught you before that when you meet an important person you want to protect, the real power of a ninja will burst out of your body. Damn old man. Orochimaru was tired of hearing his old and outdated rhetoric and didn't buy it. Drop. Tap. A drop of blood fell from the corner of the third Hokage's mouth to the ground. It seems that I don't have enough strength to pull out all your turbid and filthy soul. The third Hokage gasped for breath, but your ambition ends here. It's not over yet. Orochimaru roared, you can't stop my ambition. Addicted to ninjutsu. The third Hokage could only frown and murmur softly, I will give you, who are addicted to ninjutsu, the most appropriate punishment. Hearing this, Orochimaru stared at the third Hokage very nervously, sweating profusely. What are you going to do? I'm going to take away all your ninjutsu. What did you say? Ha. The third Hokage used up his last bit of strength, driving the god of death to stretch out the blue shadow in Orochimaru's body, and was about to cut it off with his knife. Could it be? Orochimaru looked up and understood in an instant what the third Hokage was going to do. Stop. Crack. Crack. Ah. The Grim Reaper swung his dagger and cut off his blue shadow neatly. Seal. With a loud shout, he was finally dragged into the belly of the third Hokage, and a vortex of seals drawn with the same ink as before appeared. My hands. After the third Hokage pushed him away, Orochimaru raised his hands to check. He was horrified to find that the pale skin on his palms was gradually turning into dark purple at a speed visible to the naked eye. This way, you won't be able to use any ninjutsu easily anymore. The third Hokage felt relieved after completing this last seal. If you can't use your hands, you can't make hand seals. Because most of the ninjutsu of a ninja requires hand seals and refining chakra to be used, the third Hokage is doing this is equivalent to permanently crippling his hands. Finally, I succeeded in preventing you from using ninjutsu to harm others. The third Hokage coughed up blood and repeated this sentence. Orochimaru hung his hands in anger and stared at him with hatred. The third Hokage no longer cared about his gaze and announced loudly on behalf of his students, the plan to destroy Konoha is now over. The Grim Reaper behind him also cooperated and chewed the blue shadow with relish, swallowing it up cleanly. You old bastard. Orochimaru roared at him, give me your hand back. Haha, stupid Orochimaru. The third Hokage's eyes began to glaze over. It's a pity that I couldn't die with you, but my foolish student, one day, we will meet again in another world. You old man, a dying candle in the wind. How dare you? How dare you take away all my ninjutsu? The third Hokage couldn't hear the curses Orochimaru said to him at this time, and slowly closed his eyes. At the moment, when he was about to close them completely, he seemed to see the devout and studious Orochimaru in his childhood. He smiled and said to himself in his heart, where there are leaves flying, fire will burn, the shadow of the fire will illuminate the village, and Konoha will take root and sprout again. Boom. Under the gaze of Orochimaru, Konoha village, the third Hokage Sarutobi Hiruzen, fell down. Swish, swish, swish. Lord Orochimaru, Kabuto and the Otonin finally emerged from the woods and arrived at the scene of the two men's fight. They saw Orochimaru standing there with his hands down, and they ran towards him. Looking up, they saw an old monkey lying on the ground and walking slowly approaching the third Hokage. Sarutobi. Sarutobi stretched out his hand to grab the Kusanagi sword on the third Hokage's body. At least let me pull out this sword. He slowly pulled the sword out of his body. Hey, take your dirty hands away. Teiwaya saw Sarutobi getting closer and closer to her, holding the Kusanagi sword that Lord Orochimaru had always cherished, and couldn't help but shout angrily. TSK. Sakan didn't say as much nonsense as Teiwaya, he just flashed in front of Sarutobi. Multi-kick. He stretched out 3 legs, and kicked the Kusanagi sword in Sarutobi's hand away. The sword flashed with a metallic texture, and it spun freely in the air coldly, and then it stabbed lightly into the ground with a ding. Hey, why did you send the sword flying so far? Kidomaru asked Sakan with a pale face, and shook his head. Sakan stretched his legs, and under the angry glare of Saruman, he began to speak arrogantly again. TSK, I was excited for a moment, it was really, because of that seaweed. Before he finished boasting, a voice floated over. Do you miss me so much? These words suddenly sounded like thunder in the ears of the 4 sound ninjas. Damn it. Teiwaya cursed without thinking, but couldn't help it. He trembled all over and muttered, he's really chasing fast enough. TSK, you guys try to delay the time. I'll go to Lord Orochimaru to check the situation. Kabuto ordered the 4 sound ninjas. Okay. Chapter 150 Kusanagi Sword. While the few people were in a brief confrontation, Kabuto quickly ran towards Orochimaru, who was standing in front of the 3rd Hokage with his hands hanging down. Lord Orochimaru. Kabuto approached and noticed that there was something wrong with his hands. They suddenly turned dark purple. He asked in surprise, what's going on? Where's Maki? When Orochimaru saw Kabuto coming, he didn't answer his question, but asked. I sent him away. Kabuto said while observing his hands. I asked him to fight in other streets in Konoha village. Don't look at it. It's the old man's fault that his hands became like this. Orochimaru looked at the 3rd Hokage who was lying on the ground and could never get up with a resentful look. Hiss, my hands are like being burned through now, they are burning hot. Sweat dripped down Orochimaru's forehead. Barbecue? Although Kabuto was very surprised by his situation, the current priority was not to care about this issue. Lord Orochimaru, the troops that invaded Konoha village. The Konoha collapse plan has come to an end. Before he finished reporting, Orochimaru was so burned that he couldn't stand it and directly ordered, go and get all our people to evacuate back. Understood. Kabuto ignored his impatience and followed the order. Just as the 2 of them were discussing the arrangements, Mingshin and the sound ninjas on the other side. After Mingshin finished speaking, he flashed in an instant and suddenly pulled out the Kusanagi sword from the ground. Yo. He showed his signature smile, walked up to the Saruman, and greeted him warmly. Unfortunately, the sound ninjas had no intention of paying attention to him. They just focused their attention, and were on guard, as if they were facing a great enemy. Ha ha. He swung the Kusanagi sword with his wrist, and he suddenly found that the sharpness of this sword was far beyond other divine weapons he had touched before, and it was incomparable. Xiaoli, who had been standing behind him, looked at the 3rd Hokage lying on the ground in the distance, and said uncertainly with a trembling voice, Mingshin, Hokage-sama. Let's talk about Hokage-sama later. Mingshin retracted his gaze from the Kusanagi sword, and whispered to him sideways, calm down, Xiaoli, we have to deal with these Zange families who are already tired of seeing them first. Okay. He took the initiative to step forward and negotiate with the 4 sound ninjas. Can I trouble you with a favor? What is it? Jirobo asked. This pig. Seeing him asking the seaweed head so honestly, Teiwaya couldn't help but secretly spit at him in his heart. Can you stand there honestly and let me chop you? Asshole. Don't even think about it. Before Jirobo could react, Kidomaru and Sakan had already angrily retorted to him. TSK, there's nothing I can do. Mingshin shook his head and was about to raise his sword to attack. Swish. Kabuto jumped between the 2 groups of people to block them and said to the sound ninja behind him, Lord Orochimaru has ordered that the operation is over and everyone should retreat. But the Kusanagi sword is still with that kid. Jirobo wanted to remind Kabuto about Orochimaru's weapon, but I don't have time to take care of the sword now. The current priority is to retreat from Konoha with Lord Orochimaru. Kabuto didn't wait for him to finish and arbitrarily reiterated Orochimaru's previous order. Understood. The 4 people responded in unison. TSK, you want to run? Upon hearing Kabuto's order to retreat, Mingshan hurriedly attacked with his sword, trying to keep them all. Ding. Ding. Hey, Mingshan, what are you doing? Kabuto contracted his facial muscles and asked with a smile, blocking his attack with the kunai, and after a feint to force him to retreat, he immediately threw 2 smoke bombs to the ground. With a bang, a large amount of smoke sprayed out, blocking the 2 people's sight. Sakan and Teiwaya took the opportunity to jump to Orochimaru, lifted his hands, and pretended to jump away. Damn, my view is blocked. Zyoli tried hard to reach out his hand to dispel these dark scenes. TSK. Although he heard their footsteps, because the smoke had not dissipated yet, Mingshan could only let the other party jump off the roof safely. Earth escape barrier, Earth prison hall. In order to prevent the 2 from chasing, Jirobo waited for Orochimaru to evacuate, and with the help of the smoke, he formed seals with both hands and slapped the ground. There was a rumbling sound. Using the earth walls that suddenly emerged from the ground, the 2 people in the smoke were surrounded and lived inside. Damn. Zyoli shuttled inside, trying to break the earth wall, but after a while, it still didn't work. Seeing this, Mingshan said to himself, I'll use that move. He quickly formed seals with both hands and shouted, would release, violent spear tree. Instantly, multiple wooden vines and branches quickly stretched out from his right arm and grew into a big tree, which suddenly broke through the earth wall. When the 2 jumped out of the earth wall, the sound ninjas had already disappeared with Orochimaru. We let them escape. Zyoli looked at Orochimaru, who became a dot in the distance, and said with regret, Mingshan, what should we do next? Zyoli turned around and asked his opinion. Let's give up the pursuit. Mingshan thought for a long time before saying to him, and then solemnly put away the Kusanagi sword that he had robbed. Don't chase them? Zyoli didn't understand. Why? They ran away a long time ago. Where can we chase them? Besides, even if we catch up, we can't beat Orochimaru. In fact, because of the distance and the sight was blocked by the sound ninjas, Mingshan and Zyoli didn't see the abnormality of Orochimaru's hands. At this time, Kid, an old and deep voice sounded behind him. HMM. Mingshan turned his head and found that it was the Saruma who had been lying on the ground who suddenly spoke to him. He secretly cursed in his heart, how could he forget it, and said apologetically, sorry, I was busy dealing with them and didn't notice you. No problem. Saruma looked at the 3rd Hokage from a distance, opening and closing his mouth, wanting to say something but stopping. Senior, let us young people handle the rest. Mingshan saw what was on his mind and said to Saruma calmly, well, whatever. Saruma closed his eyes and murmured, we will say goodbye to this era after all. You really took the ninja road to the extreme at this last moment. Saruma praised his old friend who had been with him for many years silently. This ending may be the most suitable for you. Bang, with a burst of white smoke rising, Saruma returned to his original world. A moment later, Kakashi and many other senior ninjas also rushed here, and several of them saw Mingshan and Zyoli standing there. They wanted to ask the 3rd Hokage what was going on, but when they saw the man lying on the ground with his eyes closed, they just walked over silently. The atmosphere was heavy and depressing. Everyone gathered around the 3rd Hokage and said nothing. They would look up at the sky tomorrow. No one knew what he was thinking at the moment. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.